Chapter 146. Lady Yan. I have always been very bold, Ling Han said in a very calm tone. You aren't scared that I will kill you? Feng Yan asked, as if there was only the two of them there. He did not even care about the presence of the third imperial prince. The third imperial prince's entire body was shaking all over. He could barely hold himself back anymore. Do you dare? Ling Han smiled. Feng Yan actually considered this question seriously for a moment, then answered. Temporarily not. Temporarily not. So that meant that he would dare to in the future. Hiss, could it be that this guy didn't know Ling Han had the two big bosses of alchemy standing behind him, and was someone that even the Rain Emperor had to give some amount of face to? If you don't dare to, then get lost. What are you lingering around here for? Planning to show off your pretty face? Ling Han rebuked. Ha 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 ha. The third imperial prince laughed loudly, feeling very gratified. Yet Feng Yan was not angered in the slightest and said, You've beaten up that worthless brother of mine a few times, and I have come tonight to repay the favor, but it'll be enough if I thrash you once. In the future, I will thoroughly discredit you, and you will become spurned by all before I finally kill you. The tone he used was one of complete calmness, as if he had secured some incredible power and authority that allowed him to kill anyone he desired to in this imperial city. Feng Yan, are you finished? The third imperial prince stood up and strode towards Feng Yan, flames of rage burning within his eyes. You are indeed very brave to actually dare to proclaim repeatedly your intention to murder in this imperial city. I shall apprehend you and deliver you to the prison to reflect on yourself. Oh, is your imperial highness going to personally give me some guidance? Feng Yan smiled calmly and said, I have long admired the Son of Heaven fist technique that your imperial highness uses, and I'd really enjoy experiencing it tonight. This guy must have lost his mind, everyone else thought, but they could not help but admire Feng Yan's bravery. How many people in the imperial city would actually dare to so openly oppose the third imperial prince? Even the young elites and geniuses of the 8 great clans would not have such ability nor the courage to do such a thing. You will soon get your wish. The third imperial prince's fists trembled, and instantly, flashes of chi circulated all over his body. That was the power of the nation. All descendants of the imperial line, even if they were from a branch line like Qi Yongyi, were able to use this ability. The difference between power of the nation and power of the city only lay in the strength of the ability. They were basically the same thing. Using power of the nation to support oneself, and to gain the ability to suppress one's opponent. It was enough to increase one's battle prowess by another 2 or even 3 battle stars. The third imperial prince was in the 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier in the first place. Once he began to manipulate power of the nation, his battle prowess would at least be worth 10 stars, and that was yet to take into consideration the additional power upgrade from his martial arts technique and fist chi. Taking all these into consideration, there would definitely be no issue for the third imperial prince to reach 11 stars. Facing a third imperial prince who was making a full-out effort, Feng Yan did not dare to be careless, and eventually withdrew his laid-back expression, becoming serious. The two of them made a move to attack, and the air instantly became extremely tense. Hee, is it appropriate to start fighting in my cherishing flower pavilion? A dainty voice was heard, and a shapely figure shot over. It was a beautiful woman with a very sensuous figure, and her face was temptingly gorgeous and coy. Her mature body was practically enough to turn the eyes of all onlookers red. How sexy! How impressive! It was enough to incite others to commit crime. Lady Yan! The third imperial prince raised his clasped hands in her direction and smiled. This was the owner of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. To be able to open such a money-squandering establishment in the imperial city, how could the owner be just any common, ordinary person? Even Feng Yan withdrew his battle intent, raised his clasped hands and said, Greetings, Lady Yan. Lady Yan smiled brightly and said, I cannot bear to receive such great courtesy from esteemed guests such as you two. However, the Cherishing Flower Pavilion has its own rules, and it is forbidden to fight here. If the two of you want to fight, please proceed outside for your battle. Haha, since Lady Yan has already thus spoken, how could I be rude? Feng Yan once again raised his clasped hands, turned to Ling Han and said, I will let go of you this once, but there will be no second time. He turned around and left, not giving any face to the third imperial prince at all. Ling Han and the third imperial prince were both clear. This was all due to Feng Luo. Because of him, Feng Yan had begun to nurse a grudge towards the two of them. More importantly, what kind of trump card had this guy obtained that he would even dare to oppose the third imperial prince in public? After the trouble caused by Feng Yan, all the guests had lost the heart to continue drinking and having fun, so the third imperial prince simply ended the banquet, and everyone returned to their respective homes. Mr. Ling, could you meet with me for a moment? Ling Han had just stepped out of the courtyard when he heard Lady Yan's voice. It was dainty and sweet as if it was made out of honey, a very beautiful voice. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Of course." He told Li Hao and Zhu Shui to go first, while he walked towards Lady Yan. "Mr. Ling, please." Lady Yan invited Ling Han into an elegant little courtyard, where flowers bloomed all around, creating a very beautiful environment. "May I know your reason for meeting with me, Lady Yan?" Ling Han sat down, and an extremely beautiful young girl served some fragrant tea. This young girl tea was of much higher quality than the two women before, and every move and smile from her seemed to have some kind of spell that would cause the hearts of those who saw her to throb and beat faster. She was also a very brave girl. She took her place, standing behind Lady Yan, and directed a curious gaze at Ling Han. That was because there were very few people in the imperial city who could enter this side courtyard, and any one of these people could cause the whole imperial city to tremble with a few stomps of their feet. A young man that looked to be even younger than herself. What basis did he have to come here? Moreover, his expression looked completely calm. There was no sign of nervousness or pleasant surprise, causing her to be even more baffled. Mr. Ling has obtained the favor of two ultimate grandmaster alchemists, which is a very curious thing for me, Lady Yan said with a beautiful smile. Perhaps I will have something that may need Mr. Ling's help in the future, and so would like to establish good relations with Mr. Ling. Well, she was direct. This is a little gift from me, and it would please me if Mr. Ling would agree to accept it. Lady Yan nodded at the young girl, and the latter withdrew a small wooden box, which she then placed on the table. Ling Han did not refuse, and simply opened the box on the spot. Inside the box lay a red-colored brocade pad, and on the brocade pad was a handguard. From the looks of it, it should be quite old. A simple, primitive air emanated from it. He stroked the handguard a few times, and closed his eyes slightly. After a moment he finally said, "Lady Yan is indeed very generous. Such a gift. I do not feel deserving of it." "Oh." Lady Yan looked curious at this and asked, "Does Mr. Ling know the use of this handguard?" "If I have not guessed wrongly, this will help one increase one's battle prowess, and it should be able to at least increase it by a whole battle star," Ling Han said. The increase of a whole battle star was a very terrifying thing. For most people, they were only able to use battle prowess that corresponded to their cultivation level, but once the battle prowess they could display exceeded their cultivation level, that would mean that they had gained the ability to challenge an opponent stronger than themselves, regardless of individual cultivation levels. That was why Ling Han had said Lady Yan was very generous. This was their first time meeting, and yet she had given him such a valuable gift. Even if Lady Yan was a very generous person by nature, this was still too much of a shock. Chapter 147. Cutting a carriage in the middle of the street. "Please speak, milady. If it is within my ability, then I would of course not refuse. If it is not, then I would not dare accept such a priceless gift," Ling Han said very calmly. The young girl looked extremely astonished at this. After hearing the effects of this handguard, he could still remain so calm. Was this guy really a young man? Why did he seem like an old man who had suffered uncountable hardships? Lady Yan smiled and said, "Since it is something that I want to request your help with, then it is of course within your ability, Mr. Ling. The task that I would like to seek your help with is for you to request the very able person behind Mr. Ling to concoct a permanent pill for me." Permanent pill? An expression of shock appeared on Ling Han's face. "Milady has a friend that has entered into a state of false death." "How did you know?" Lady Yan stood suddenly, looking very agitated. Permanent pill was a black-grade high-level alchemical pill, but it was very near the level of earth-grade. The number of black-grade high-level alchemists that could successfully concoct it could be counted on the fingers of one hand. In the past, Lady Yan had also asked Fu Yuanshang and Wu Songlin to help her concoct it, but the two of them did not have the slightest bit of certainty that they could succeed, and so refused her. And now, Ling Han was able to guess the reason for her need of the permanent pill just from hearing its name. How could she not believe that there was a grandmaster alchemist behind him that was even more awesome than Fu Yuanshang and Wu Songlin? Earth-grade alchemist. Anything that happened in Cherishing Flower Pavilion would never escape her eyes or ears. Thus, when she found out that Ling Han had a profoundly deep friendship with the two big bosses of alchemy, she had already guessed that there was an even more capable alchemist standing behind Ling Han. Otherwise, Wu Songlin and Fu Yuanshang would never have lowered themselves to befriend someone so much younger than themselves. This caused her to be even more resolved to establish a good relationship with Ling Han, and see if she would be able to obtain the help of that grandmaster alchemist behind Ling Han to concoct permanent pill for her. I guessed, Ling Han answered serenely. He would naturally not be telling her that he had been the alchemy emperor in his last life, and there was no pill formulae that he had not heard of or seen before. The more serene he appeared to be, the higher his position became in Lady Yan's heart. This was what confidence meant. Mr. Ling, does the alchemist behind you have the certainty to successfully concoct the permanent pill? Lady Yan asked in a slightly shaking voice. Yes, Ling Han nodded and smiled. In truth, if it had been a few days ago, he would really not have the certainty to be successful, because this was near the level of Earth-grade alchemical pills, and he could only manage to successfully concoct yellow-grade high-level alchemical pills at maximum. However, after he had fused with the strange fire, he had enough confidence that he would be able to concoct all alchemical pills from Earth-grade and below. Who asked him to be the alchemy emperor in his last life? Really? Happiness came too suddenly, causing Lady Yan to feel that everything was surreal. Ling Han nodded. Thank you, Mr. Ling. Lady Yan bowed slightly, her beautiful eyes brimming with the light of tears. Ling Han said, hand over the ingredients necessary to me, then come to the Hu Yang Academy to collect the pill 3 days later. 3 days. A dilemma that had troubled her for 10 years could be solved within a mere 3 days' time? Lady Yan's expression looked both pleasantly surprised and somewhat blank. She was stunned for a while before she said, Shuang, go collect the ingredients for me. Yes, milady, the young girl beside her answered quickly. Her name was Yun Shuang, and she was an orphan who had been taken in by Lady Yan. Since little, Lady Yan had loved and doted upon her as if she was her real daughter. Very soon, Yun Shuang returned with another wooden box. This one was much bigger than the previous one. Then I shall take my leave first, Ling Han said, picking up the wooden box. Please allow my personal carriage to send you back. Lady Yan pointed at the wooden box in Ling Han's hands. It would be inconvenient for him to walk back when he had such a large box in his hands. Ling Han actually had the spatial ring on him, but would naturally not use it in front of Lady Yan, so he nodded and said, Then I shall have to trouble you, Lady Yan. You're welcome, Mr. Ling. Lady Yan had solved a huge problem and could not help feeling very happy, showing a bright dazzling smile. Shuang, escort Mr. Ling back for me. Yes, milady. Yun Shuang agreed respectfully. In the company of Yun Shuang, Ling Han stepped out of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. There was already a horse-drawn carriage at the entrance, and the horse drawing the carriage was a handsome, completely white horse. However, there was a deer's horn growing from the forehead of the horse. That was the cloud deer horse, a type of demonic beast. It was not very powerful, but because it was very good-looking, it was usually used to draw carriages or as a mount. It went for a very high price. It was even more luxurious inside the carriage. There was even a soft couch on which one could lay down to rest, as well as fresh fruits and fine wine that allowed a traveler to enjoy rare luxuries even when on a journey. Please, young Master Han, Yun Shuang said. She was extremely curious about Ling Han. A young man like him could actually resolve the problem that had troubled her mistress for so many years. Ling Han boarded the carriage, took out the handguard, and began to refine it. Yun Shuang, who was sitting at one side, felt extremely depressed. She was a very beautiful young girl, and what man would not have his eyes stuck on her upon seeing her? Yet this brat completely ignored her presence, simply focusing all of his attention on that handguard. Yes, she admitted, that handguard was very valuable, but it already belonged to him. He could look at it any time, but was she someone that he could see at any time that he liked? What a foolish brat. Ling Han did not know that he had become an unromantic youth in this young girl's heart. He continued to observe this handguard, and his palm rubbed against the patterns branded on the surface of the handguard, his face pensive. Spiritual tools were typically used to increase the user's battle prowess, but it was typically done through the spiritual tool's own power to achieve this means. For example, if there was the power of ice sealed into a spiritual tool, then once released, it would create 1,000 miles of ice, and snow would fly over 10,000 miles, which was a very powerful ability. This was not directly increasing the martial artist's own battle prowess. But this handguard was actually able to increase its user's battle prowess by a single battle star, which attracted Ling Han's interest. He wanted to investigate clearly the amazing properties of this spiritual tool. If it could be used directly within his body, then wouldn't it be even more amazing? He sat with utter seriousness, as if he was an immortal monk. Even if there was an extremely beautiful young girl seated beside him, it was as if he had not seen her at all. Yun Shuang could not stop her face from twitching at being ignored, looking very much unable to accept this. This was really too despicable. She was an extreme beauty, hey? Pang! All of a sudden, the carriage actually split open from the middle. That was a flash of light from a saber, seemingly powerful enough to slice the heavens and destroy the land, that cut the carriage in half. What person would be so bold as to make a move in the imperial city? Ling Han and Yun Shuang both leapt out of the overturning carriage before landing steadily on the ground. The coachman did not suffer much injury. He drove the horse and drew the other half of the carriage some distance away before finally stopping. Ling Han and Yun Shuang both raised their heads, and not too far away, on a wall, there was a young man standing with a saber in his hand, a powerful dominating pressure emanating from him. Feng Yan. Ling Han, I've said before that I will be giving you a thrashing tonight, he smiled. His expression remained cold, and the pressure exuded from him was very terrifying. This was a person that liked to break the rules. Or so Ling Han thought. He had also been such a person in his last life, someone who would not be shackled by any kind of rules or regulations. That was because he had enough power to disregard them as one of the 7 ultimate warriors of heaven tier in the world. Was his status not awesome enough? Feng Yan was not an idiot. He dared to openly oppose the 3rd imperial prince just now, and now cut a carriage in half in public. This was not merely arrogance. He must naturally have some basis for his overwhelming confidence. Feng Yan, you have gone too far. Are you not going to give face even to Milady? Yun Shuang asked furiously. Was this a public challenge issued to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion? Chapter 148. A Magnificent Pervert. I have already given face to Lady Yan before. Feng Yan smiled softly. That was why I did not make a move at Cherishing Flower Pavilion, and deliberately waited here instead. He had power, talent, and patience. He was indeed a difficult opponent. That's how Ling Han thought of him. In truth, he even admired Feng Yan's character quite a bit. Unfortunately, before the two of them had even met, they had already stood on opposing sides, and were already destined to be foes. In his last life, even if there were a few 100 million Feng Yans added together, they would not be a match for even just a look from him, but now. Ling Han's face grew serious. The 7th layer of gushing spring tear possessed even the ability to kill him instantly. Don't worry, I won't kill you temporarily, that is. Feng Yan smiled, but this smile was filled with pressure and domineering. Feng Yan. Yun Shuang called out loudly. That was really enough. One after another, they all did not care about the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, and did not even pay any attention to an outstanding beauty like herself. She was practically about to become extraordinarily furious. Feng Yan did not even spare her a glance, and simply slashed his saber through the air. Shwa! A flash of saber chi danced quickly towards them, as if it was a raging dragon. When cultivation levels were different, the power behind the saber chi would of course be different. Ling Han was aware that the 6 flashes of sword chi he had now could not match even 1/10 of the power behind the single flash of saber chi. However, there was no such thing as giving up without even battling in his mind. Ling Han gave a loud shout, drew his sword and parried. 6 flashes of sword chi shot forwards unhindered. Pang! Without any surprise, he was flung away by this blow from the saber. The box in his left hand instantly flew out of his grasp, but his right hand still firmly held onto his sword. As a swordsman, he would keep his hold on his sword as long as he was still alive. Cough! He spat out a mouthful of blood. When he looked down, he could see there was a deep wound on his chest, from which blood was gushing out steadily. However, indestructible heaven scroll was already circulating, and this wound was slowly shrinking in size. "N?" A hint of seriousness flickered through Feng Yan's eyes. "6 flashes of sword qi? You are more powerful than I expected. Additionally, your physical body seems to be much stronger than any normal martial artist of element gathering tier. I had intended to wound you severely with this slash." Even so, his tone remained completely calm, as if everything was under his control. Ling Han wiped off the blood at the corner of his lips, stood proudly, flicked his sword and said, "I admit that you are currently more powerful than I am. I would need about half a year to be able to surpass you and firmly trample upon you." "Ha ha 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 ha." Feng Yan was stunned for a moment, before suddenly laughing loudly. He nodded and said, "You are indeed extraordinarily talented to be able to form 6 flashes of sword qi, and are indeed much more powerful than I was in the past. However, you will not have the chance to live for another half year. Within 3 months at most, even if you were in the Imperial Palace of Rain Country, I would be able to seize you and you will die by my saber." Yun Shuang, who had been standing at one side, was completely dumbstruck and could not say anything at all. In her mind, these two people were both maniacs. Feng Yan was so strong. Yet Ling Han actually said that he would be able to catch up to him in a half year's time and even trample on Feng Yan. And Feng Yan was even more of a maniac to say that even if Ling Yan hid in the Imperial Palace, he would be able to seize him and kill him. What treasonous words was he saying? "Oh, then bring it on, and let me experience the power of the so-called strongest genius of Rain Country." Ling Han's battle intent had shot skywards. He had his own trump cards in hand. Even if it was merely the strange fire, if Feng Yan was caught by the strange fire through close contact, even spiritual ocean tier elites would die. What more a mere gushing spring tier martial artist like Feng Yan? "You do not have to try to anger me. Since I have said that I will be giving you a thrashing tonight, then it would be useless even if you kneel down and beg for mercy," Feng Yan said calmly. Another slash from his saber shot out, and a terrifyingly powerful flash of saber qi danced forwards. Pang! Ling Han was once again flung away, but he was much better prepared this time. His sword managed to block an uncountable number of power ripples, and actually dispersed about over half of the power behind this one slash. Though he was still flung away and spat blood, the injuries he had suffered this time were much lighter when compared to the previous time. Feng Yan could not help but look astonished at this, and said, "I only attacked once, and you were able to capture the moves of my saber, and use a very wonderful way to defend yourself. You indeed deserve the name of genius. Now, I am beginning to waver. A genius like you that could become a threat to me. Should I take the chance to eliminate you as soon as possible?" When he said the last words, he did not hide the killing intent brimming in his heart at all. Ling Han's left hand moved slightly. Strange fire could be flung out at any time. This was currently his greatest killing move. Feng Yan leaped down from the wall and strode towards Ling Han. Every step he took felt like it caused the ground to have a slight tremor. Yun Shuang was shocked, then realized that it was not the ground that was trembling, but it was her heart that was actually influenced by Feng Yan's movements without her knowledge. This guy was really powerful. However, she still stepped out courageously and stood in front of Feng Yan, for Ling Han was the key to the concoction of permanent pill. This was the most important thing to Lady Yan, and even if she lost her life in the process, she wanted to make sure Ling Han was safe. "Move away!" Ling Han shouted. He had not fallen to the level that he needed a woman to die in his stead. "I will not wound you for the sake of Lady Yan." Feng Yan's left hand flashed out and a powerful force shot out. Yun Shuang was instantly pushed to one side, her face pale, and she couldn't manage to get her breath back, which caused her great suffering. A martial artist of the 9th layer of element gathering tier against an opponent in the 7th layer of gushing spring tier. This was the only possible outcome. Feng Yan continued to walk towards Ling Han, his expression cool. There was no way to tell what he was thinking or intending to do. Was he going to simply injure Ling Han, or kill him? Ling Han waited with utter seriousness. This was an opponent that was so strong that it was enough to cause one to lose all hope. This little sister is really very pretty. Can you let me take a look at your breasts?" It was at this moment that a voice was suddenly heard, and a figure appeared. This newcomer was currently looking at Yun Shuang with lecherous eyes, and his fingers were wriggling like noodles, as if he was about to grab onto her at any moment. Yun Shuang experienced a scare, and quickly shielded her breasts with her arms, rapidly taking a step backwards. If I can't look at your breasts, then I would be fine with your bottom too. This person settled for the next best thing, as if he was a person that was very easy to deal with. This was a young man that looked to be only in his 20s. He was not a hideous man, but could not be considered handsome either. He simply looked like the most common of men that could be found on the streets. A perverted smile was all over his face, and he was practically salivating at Yun Shuang's *******. Yun Shuang was so scared that she took another step back. Good little sister, don't be scared. I'm just a pervert, not a bad person. This person said with a very guiltless expression. A pervert could act so confident as if he was in the right. Feng Yan's eyes narrowed. With his ability, he actually did not manage to see how this person had suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and now he could not even tell how powerful this person was. A strong feeling of dread uncontrollably rose up within him. How do I address you? He asked. Don't speak to me, you ugly man, the person spat out, his eyes still completely focused on Yun Shuang. Little sister, what color are your underpants? Yun Shuang turned completely pale, and Feng Yan's expression did not look too nice either. He said in a deep voice, Are you intending to defend this brat? Just blabbering on and on, don't you know that's very annoying? The person turned around to sweep a look over Feng Yan. If you keep chattering, I will thrash you to the point you become even uglier. He turned around to look back at Yun Shuang and said, Little sister, my name is Gu Fenghua, a magnificent pervert, a 100% pervert. He said proudly, as if being able to become a pervert was a very honorable achievement. Chapter 149. Retreat. Feng Yan's expression changed greatly, and he could not stop himself from making a move as he declared, Then let me experience your ability. He slashed out with his saber, and shot an attack at the pervert who had called himself Gu Fenghua. Pang! Gu Fenghua parried this slash with his bare fists, using some kind of unknown martial arts technique that turned both his fists completely black at the moment of his attack, as if they were made out of metal. Clashing with the saber caused a series of fiery sparks from the friction. After this exchange, both of them took a few steps back, and a serious expression appeared on their faces at the same time. You should be in the 9th layer of gushing spring tier, right? Feng Yan asked with a lofty expression. Otherwise, you would not be able to block this slash of mine. Gu Fenghua looked very astonished, and said, Ugly man, you are obviously not a pervert, but why do you have such power? Apparently in his eyes, all powerful elites had to be perverts. Feng Yan humphed and said, Stop trying to scam me. Tonight, I'll give you some face, and temporarily let this brat off the hook. Ugly man, what kind of unfathomable nonsense are you blabbering on about? How could a handsome pervert like myself know such an ugly brat? Gu Fenghua's face was filled with disdain, and he turned and said to Yun Shuang, Girl, look at how extraordinarily big your breasts are, and the clothes you are wearing are obviously a bit too small. Why don't you let this big brother take your measurements and make you a new suit of clothing? He stretched out a hand, and looked to be about to grab her breast, scaring Yun Shuang so much that she took another few steps back. Feng Yan looked deeply at Gu Fenghua. There was actually such a young and powerful elite in Rain Country, but why had he never heard of this man? He was a decisive person by character, and immediately turned and left. Pervert, thanks. Ling Han grinned at Gu Fenghua. Yun Shuang's face turned pale. It was one thing if he proclaimed himself a pervert, but it was a completely different matter if another person called him a pervert. Who knows if this would incite the anger of this pervert? You have good taste. Gu Fenghua gave him a thumbs up, actually able to tell that I am a pervert. I am definitely going to befriend you. Pooh! Yun Shuang coughed repeatedly. Who would not be able to tell that you are a pervert? Was that something you should be proud of and boast about? Indeed, the heart and thoughts of a pervert could not be understood with conventional reasoning. You are not a citizen of Rain Country, right? Ling Han looked at him, thought for a moment, and asked, Was that Black Iron Hand you were using just now? How do you know of Black Iron Hand? Gu Fenghua looked extremely surprised at this. This was a secret technique of his school, and it was actually recognized by a youth of Rain Country. This was practically inconceivable. He widened his eyes, stared at Ling Han and asked, Could it be that you are also a pervert? The corners of Ling Han's lips twitched. One indeed had to prepare to become a pervert in order to converse with a pervert. He laughed loudly and said, "The identifying characteristics of black iron hand are too distinctive. When it is used, the user's fists would look like black iron, and with the advancing of cultivation level, the level of hardness would continue to increase. It is definitely not weaker than any spiritual tools of the same level." Gu Fenghua's expression changed a few times, before settling on delight, and he said, "You are indeed a pervert. We can definitely become very good friends. Why have you come to Rain Country?" Ling Han repeated his question. "My master foresaw that a secret treasure would appear here, so I came to take a look to see if I could get a share for myself," Gu Fenghua said. "Then you'll have to be disappointed. An ancient historical site had indeed appeared some time ago, and high-level spiritual tools had floated out on the waters of an underground river. However, it's gone by now," Ling Han said, shaking his head. What a wasted trip." Gu Fenghua beat his chest and stamped his feet, looking very disappointed. But he immediately smiled right after and said, "However, I managed to encounter another pervert on this trip, so it would still be worth it." Ling Han could not help but sweat at this and said, "Only someone with your charm could be called a pervert. My name is Ling Han, and I definitely would not be able to compare to you in terms of perversion." "Haha, so you do know yourself very well." Gu Fenghua looked very proud at this before he suddenly sighed and shook his head. Since I've already missed out on the chance of getting a fateful encounter, then I'll just go back to the mountains to continue my training." Please. Ling Han and Yun Shuang both made a gesture of respectfully seeing him off. Neither of them were able to deal with this pervert. "Then I'll go now," Gu Fenghua said. "We won't bother with seeing you off," Ling Han and Yun Shuang said at the same time. Gu Fenghua took a few steps before suddenly stopping, turning around, and saying, "Girl, you really can't let me measure your breasts." "Get lost." Yun Shuang pointed with a finger, forcing down the urge to commit murder. "Looks like I have yet to complete my training to become a full-fledged pervert," Gu Fenghua mumbled. "This time when I return to the mountains, I must surpass my master in terms of perversion and become the most perverted." After saying so, he took a great leap, and his figure disappeared into the darkness of the street. "There are indeed many extraordinary things in this wide world," Ling Han said pensively. Yet Yun Shuang said, "Feng Yan actually dared to damage a carriage of Cherishing Flower Pavilion. I will definitely report this to Milady when I return, and let Milady pressure the Academy into harshly punishing that evil man." Ling Han shook his head and said, "You will most likely be disappointed. Feng Yan should have gotten the support of a great power this time round, so the Academy would definitely not deal with him. Otherwise, Feng Yan would not have opposed the third Imperial Prince so openly. In terms of reputation in the Imperial City, the third Imperial Prince was definitely not weaker than Lady Yan." Yun Shuang was still very furious. She beckoned the coachman back, and the two of them returned to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Meanwhile, Ling Han stored the wooden box into his spatial ring. Since he had already promised Lady Yan, and had also received the reward from her, he would of course have to fulfill his promise and concoct the permanent pill. This time, his trip was completely peaceful, and he soon returned to Huyang Academy. "The security in the Imperial City does not seem very good," he said to himself. Feng Yan actually attacked him so brazenly on a street, yet there was no sign of any soldiers. He did not know whether it was that they had reacted too slowly, or they had not made a move at all. "I'll just concoct the permanent pill first." He began to concoct the pill. With the ability that he has retained from his last life, concocting an earth-grade alchemical pill was of course a piece of cake, but he did not dare to be careless now. After all, he was increasing the temperature of his flames with the use of the strange fire, so he would not be able to fully control the flames as he wished. But for the Alchemy Emperor, this would only need a slight bit of extra attention from him. Separating the ingredients, purification, and these techniques were used very smoothly. If Fu Yuanshang and Wu Songlin were here, they would definitely again turn pale from shock, because the speed Ling Han was displaying now was a considerable few times faster than what he had shown in front of them. Ling Han just had not wanted to scare them too much previously. The strange fire burnt brightly, contributing heat that far exceeded what Ling Han could produce based on his current cultivation level. This caused Ling Han to sweat greatly, but the droplets of sweat quickly turned into water vapor from the extreme heat. There even appeared a few cracks on his skin, as signs of impending dehydration appeared on his body. Thankfully, his physical body was strong enough and nearing body of rock cliff, so it was not a problem for his body to withstand such high heat. After half an hour, 3 differently colored flames suddenly appeared on his hand. 3 Fire Guide. This was his trademark secret skill that he had invented himself. Pill completed, he laughed, and removed the lid of the alchemy furnace. His eyes swept over the contents, and a shocked expression appeared on his face. The strange fire is indeed extraordinary. At first, I would definitely not have been able to concoct a pill so close to Earth grade at my current level. But now, I not only successfully concocted it, but its quality has even reached 16 stars, which is far above my expectations. No wonder there had been so many alchemists wanting to obtain a strange fire in my last life. It would indeed be of great help in the process of concoction. If I was able to fuse with even more strange fires, then wouldn't the quality of the pills I concoct be even higher? Chapter 150. The Egg Has Hatched. Ling Han was very rueful. In his last life, he had already stood at the top of the field of alchemy, and had not thought of fusing with any strange fire, but from the looks of things now, even if he once again returned to the peak of alchemy, strange fire would still be a source of great help to him. If I ever encounter any other strange fire in future, I will definitely not miss the opportunity to fuse with the strange fire. And now, I'll take a bath first. After pill concoction, he could not avoid being covered by a great amount of dust. Since he was going to sleep later, even if Ling Han was not a clean freak, he would also feel uncomfortable with such a large amount of dust on him. He boiled water in the kitchen, and after a while, he poured it into a big wooden tub. The water was high enough to reach his waist. After a considerable number of times boiling water, he finally filled the tub to mid-level. Ling Han removed all his clothes, and stepped into the tub of water. The warmth from the water spread out and relaxed his entire body. When he was concocting the pill earlier on, he himself was almost barbecued in the process. He had almost lost all the water content in his body, and now with the nurturing of the warm water, his skin immediately returned to its previous smoothness and elasticity at a visible speed. He closed his eyes and rested his mind, considering his plans for the near future. In the Imperial City, he had already reached quite a high level on the social ladder at first, convincing the 2 great bosses of the current field of alchemy to become his pillars of support. He could practically do anything he liked, but Feng Yan's return had brought a very unstable variable into his path. This person was like him, completely ignoring all shackles of rules and regulations. Most importantly, he must have gotten hold of some kind of trump card that allowed him to disregard all rules. If he was also in Gushing Spring tier, he would naturally not fear Feng Yan, but the 6th layer of Element Gathering tier was still a bit too far from Gushing Spring tier. I had thought that my cultivation speed was already very fast, but looks like it's still not enough. He could not help but frown. Could it be that I would have to use passing golden needle acupuncture to force out my potential and reach Gushing Spring tier as soon as possible? But this is undoubtedly a last resort that would only make things worse. It will force me to pay the price of my future potential to force out power beyond my current capability. If it is not the only means available to me, then I had best avoid using such a method. Moreover, there is only one chance to use such a method in my whole lifetime, so I should save this chance for when I need it even more. According to Feng Yan, I should still be relatively safe within these 3 months. With my current speed of cultivation, 3 months would be enough for me to reach Gushing Spring tier, or even 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier, and I need not fear him by then. But that Lian Guangzhu is a little odd. He looked like he wanted to take me in as his personal disciple previously, but did not bother with me anymore after throwing me here. That old man's attitude is a bit ambiguous. Forget it. I need only to increase my own ability, and as long as I am capable enough, whatever devious scheme there is would be of no effect on me. Jia! The door to the kitchen was pushed open, and a dainty figure walked in. It was Lu Ru'er. She quietly walked in, as if she was a thief. Her eyes swept over the kitchen, and saw a head sticking out of a wooden tub which stunned her. She had slept already, but suddenly felt pangs of hunger while she was sleeping. Thus she got up, intending to look for some food, but never thought that she would encounter the master of this household, which naturally caused her to feel the awkwardness a thief would feel upon being caught. Ah! But only after a moment, she suddenly shrieked and covered her face with her hands. She turned around abruptly and ran off. "Damn scoundrel!" she cursed. Ling Han had a strange expression on his face. This was his house, and even if he decided to take a bath in the middle of the night, why would that offend anyone? Why did he now become a damn scoundrel? Moreover, his whole body was submerged in the tub, and she didn't even see anything. Did she need to have such a dramatic reaction? But after such a disturbance from her, he had also lost the mood to continue bathing, so he stood up, took his towel and wiped himself off, intending to return to his room to sleep. "Damn scoundrel, don't come over. I want to take some food, pu." Who would have thought that Lu Ru'er would return suddenly at this moment? The girl spoke very quickly, and he had just barely heard her when she had already walked in. Schwa! It was as if time had frozen, and the two of them stared at each other without moving. "Ah!" Lu Ru'er shrieked loudly again, before once again racing out. "Damn pervert, dirty pervert!" Ling Han rubbed his chin. This wooden tub was tall enough to reach his waist, and had covered completely all the important parts of his anatomy, so there was no possibility of her seeing anything inappropriate. Why was this girl embarrassed again? "I am not a pervert," he mumbled. When he recalled how he had encountered Gu Fenghua previously, he could not help but grin. "Little girl, let me give you a serious warning. I am now going to put on my clothes, and if you dare to peek at me again, I will smack your bottom sore," Ling Han warned before he stepped out of the wooden tub. He quickly wiped off his body and put on his clothes. Outside, Lu Ru'er's heart was beating like crazy, and her face was as red as a tomato, as she fiercely stomped her feet. "Despicable damn scoundrel, if it was not because I had not yet recovered my full ability, I would definitely cut off your dog's head. Wah! I'm going to die from fury." When she recalled how Ling Han's naked body was practically branded into her mind, she could not help but want to go crazy. Ling Han returned to his room, and took one look at Hunyo's egg, which did not seem to have changed in the slightest. He then lay down on his bed and quickly slipped into slumber. "Ka ka ka," a faint sound was heard, which was especially clear in the silence of late night. Ling Han's eyes suddenly snapped open and he flipped himself up to stand, his hands stretched out in front of his body in a defensive stance. This was due to the alert nature of a martial artist. However, he quickly realized that this odd sound was not because enemies had arrived outside his room, but came from a corner of his room. That giant egg. Hunyo! There was no candle lit inside the room, and the window was also tightly closed, so the room should be completely dark. However, there was a faint flickering light in the room. Light was coming from the eggshell. There were patterned marks on the eggshell, and it seemed as if these marks had suddenly gained a life of their own, continuously flickering on the eggshell. Hunyo was about to hatch out. Ling Han had a very strange feeling. What kind of race did this little girl come from? Without a doubt, such a great change had happened to Hunyo because she had eaten the godly medicine. From this aspect, Hunyo must have gotten a colossal benefit, and this was a change for the positive. But this was really too strange. Would it be like a butterfly's metamorphosis? A caterpillar entered into its cocoon, and what came out was a butterfly. The answer should be soon revealed. Ka ka ka, slight cracks appeared on the eggshell, and a powerful heartbeat was heard from within. Apparently, Hunyo should have entered a state similar to hibernation, and when the changes to her body were complete, the various bodily functions were awakened. Otherwise, with the little girl's appetite, she would have long rebelled after these few days of not eating or drinking. How could she have so obediently remained inside for so long? Tong, tong, tong. The sound of the heartbeat was as loud as the cracking of thunder, and Ling Han could not help the slight change to his expression. He had seen many powerful races in his last life, and the strength of the heartbeat, in a sense, would reflect the strength of life and vitality of these races. From this aspect, Hunyo would be adequate to rank as the top. Ling Han was getting more and more curious, and could not help guessing again. Would the little girl come out with an extra 2 horns, or with a pair of wings? A ball of light flickered within the egg, spun around, and he could faintly see the shrunken figure of a human being. Meat! A loud shout was heard, and this tiny figure suddenly stretched out all her limbs. Pa! The egg instantly shattered into pieces, and out popped a tiny little girl. Chapter 151. A shocking discovery. The meat-eating little girl had returned. Hug! Hug! Once Hunyeo caught sight of Ling Han, she immediately pounced into Ling Han's arms and buried her head into his embrace. E. Ling Han examined the little girl from head to toe, but why did he not find any horns, wings, or anything of the sort? This little girl looked like there was absolutely no difference from before. What was going on here? After he had eaten 2 portions of the godly medicine, the first portion refined his flesh and skin, and the second portion reforged his bones. He had practically gone through a complete transformation, and the changes he experienced were extremely distinct. But Hunyeo didn't show the slightest bit of change at all. If it was just as it looked, then wouldn't it have been a waste of the last portion of godly medicine? No. Some changes cannot be seen from the surface. There must have been a great change to the little girl's body. Sniff. Sniff. Hunyeo wrinkled her nose, and suddenly, a ferocious light shone from her eyes. With a tang, she leaped out of Ling Han's arms and regained the look of a wild beast. All her 4 limbs pushed off from the floor, and Xiao, she rapidly jumped out of the room. Aya! Ling Han immediately realized that Hunyeo must have used her nose to sense the presence of the Lu sisters. This little girl was like a wild beast, not only having a very good nose, but also a very strong territorial nature. Now that there were 2 strangers who had entered into her territory, the little girl's ferocious character would naturally be roused. Ling Han hurriedly chased after her. Pang! In a few leaps, Hunyeo had arrived at her own room. Without any further thoughts, she immediately barged in, and the door was actually easily shattered to pieces by the force. Like a little tiger, she pounced in, her mouth slightly open and her hands formed into claws that could attack at any moment. Damn scoundrel, you indeed had evil intentions. Since Lu Ru'er saw Ling Han's bare upper body, her heart has been beating like a drum and her face was as red as blood. There was no way she would have been able to go back to sleep, so when she heard the sound of the door breaking, she naturally thought that Ling Han's lust was stimulated and he had come to force himself on her. She instantly bounced up and struck out her palm in an attack. Pang! Her palm struck Hunyeo's body. Though her previous power had dropped to the bottom, after a few days of recovery, her power had already reached the level of body refining tier. This palm strike of hers actually caused Hunyeo to be flung back. However, she immediately realized that something was off. That was not a huge pervert, or a great lecher she had struck, but rather a little girl. Xiao! Ling Han came in right after, stretched out his arms and caught Hunyeo, who had been flung back by her blow. Damn scoundrel! Lu Ru'er could not stop herself from cursing when she saw Ling Han was there. And after such a big commotion, Lu Feng'er woke up as well. Her eyes swept over the scene in front of her, obviously a bit confused about what was going on. Kill! Hunyeo struggled in Ling Han's arms, and there was no sign that she had suffered any injury from the blow. Ling Han was relieved, and said with a smile, "It's a misunderstanding. The place that the 2 of you are staying in now is this little girl's room. She was not here these few days, but has returned just now and discovered that you 2 have taken over her room, so she thought the 2 of you were enemies. That's why she is a little agitated." That was not just agitation. She looked like she practically wanted to devour them. The Lu sisters thought as they took in Hunyeo's very ferocious appearance. However, this place belonged to Ling Han, so he was the one who had the final say in things. Haha, it's late so we won't disturb your rest, Ling Han said with a laugh and stepped back out. However, there was no way to close the door that Hunyeo had shattered. Never mind, he'd deal with the door tomorrow. After he had returned to his own bedroom, Ling Han pushed Hunyeo down to sit on the bed, and said, "Little girl, those 2 girls are temporarily considered to be friends, so don't attack them." Hunyeo pouted to show her displeasure. She did not like other living creatures trespassing into her territory, but since Ling Han had already said so, she could only accept it. However, little girls would be little girls, and she quickly forgot about her displeasure. She clung to Ling Han and said, "Hug! Hug!" Ling Han laughed loudly, and examined Hunyeo closely a second time, yet could not detect any kind of changes on her at all. He felt it very strange. That's not right. He immediately shook his head. Hunyeo had sustained a blow from Lu Ru'er just now, but did not suffer any injury at all. There was a definite upgrade to the little girl's physical body, but to exactly what extent, that would need to be confirmed through continuously increasing the force of attack. Forget it, he'd just think about it later. Seeing that there was a faint light in the sky, Ling Han decided not to sleep any longer, and chose to begin cultivation instead. He sat down cross-legged and began to circulate the 5 elements heaven grade skill. His heaven grade spirit base trembled lightly, and immediately started to swallow and suck in the spiritual chi around him like a whale. After he had taken the godly medicine and upgraded his bones, flesh, and veins, the speed at which he could absorb spiritual chi had also increased quite a bit. It was not that his spirit base had become more powerful, but because his veins had become cleaner, which naturally allowed spiritual chi to flow through his veins more smoothly than before. This would also have the effect of increasing the speed of his cultivation. Of course, this was also due to how awesome his spirit base was. Otherwise, after absorbing so much spiritual chi, if he could not manage to refine it into his own origin power in time, what would be the point? At the end, he swallowed an ancient clear pill to further speed up his cultivation. Hunyo watched him for a moment before getting bored, and imitated him in sitting cross-legged. Ling Han immediately felt something was off. Because there had suddenly appeared the eye of a hurricane next to him that was absorbing spiritual chi, and fighting with him over the spiritual chi around them, causing his cultivation speed to drop drastically in a single instant. His eyes snapped open and saw how Hunyo was sitting cross-legged in a very serious manner, and there was actually a solemn expression on her little face. Yeah. Though he was already sure, he was still very shocked when he confirmed the fact with his own eyes. Hunyo actually awoke her own spirit base and had officially stepped onto the path of a cultivator. How inconceivable! This little girl was so young. Typically, one would only awaken his spirit base at about 11 or 12 years old. Even if one managed to awaken his spirit base early, that would be 1 or 2 years earlier at most. However, this little girl awoke her spirit base 7 or 8 years ahead of time. Moreover, based on the extent she was snatching away the spiritual chi just now, Hunyo's spirit base was definitely heaven grade, and could even be a match for his own. One had to know that his spirit base had all 5 elements, and was one of the top-rated even among heaven grade spirit bases. Then what was the little girl's spirit base? Ling Han concentrated his divine sense into his eyes, and used a sliver of the spiritual power he had retained from his last life to gaze into Hunyo's dantian. What? Ling Han felt a sudden pain in his eyes, and quickly turned his head. He rubbed his eyes with his hand and actually found traces of blood on his hand. But he did not bother about this now, because he was still astonished by what he had actually witnessed just a moment ago. Was that real? He saw Hunyo's spirit base, but was that really a spirit base? Ling Han felt this was inconceivable, and his entire body experienced a coldness that came from a layer of cold sweat. In Hunyo's dantian, that spirit base was actually a slumbering person. That was a magnificent beauty, and though her eyes were tightly closed, causing her beauty to pale quite a few shades, she was still disturbingly beautiful. Even Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan seemed to pale in comparison with this sleeping beauty. There was no mistake. It was definitely that magnificent beauty that was absorbing spiritual chi, and her efficiency at absorbing spiritual chi was not the least beneath him. Ling Han had never seen such a spirit base that could actually take the form of a human being. But this was not what caused him to feel cold. When he had been staring at this magnificent beauty, her eyes suddenly snapped open, and a terrifying killing intent actually sliced to him through his own divine sense. If the Black Tower had not trembled slightly at an appropriate time, most likely, he would not just suffer his eyes bleeding, but have his divine sense completely obliterated. Chapter 152. Weird. The spirit was the basis of a human being, and once divine sense was destroyed, what was left behind would only be an empty shell. Just now, Ling Han had nearly stepped through the gates of hell. Curiosity really killed the cat. Ling Han shook his head. If there had not been a monster inside his body as well, he would definitely have landed in a horrible state just now. Without question, the godly medicine activated some kind of power in Hunyo, or awakened her, which should have happened at least after another 4 or 5 years. Yet a very weird feeling rose up in Ling Han, because that spirit base within Hunyo's body, that magnificent beauty, gave him a more powerful feeling than any ultimate warrior of heaven tier. In his last life, the Sword Emperor and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had been the strongest existences among the ranks of heaven tier elites, yet neither of them had caused him to feel such heavy pressure before. He was well aware that even if he had recovered the power he had at heaven tier, he would be completely defenseless facing such a being, just like how his body was easily shattered by a shockwave from the Black Tower in his last life. This was definitely not a power that belonged to the mortal plane. The Black Tower was already a great mystery on its own, taking his body as its new home, but Hunyo was even more mysterious, having what he suspected to be an ultimate being taking the place of her spirit base. Yet she was obviously just a little girl in body refining tier. But when he thought about it, weren't the two of them quite similar? Could that magnificent beauty be developed by some kind of ultimate treasure? If that was really the case, then forming into a very real human-like appearance did not seem that strange. To hell with it. Ling Han pressed a hand to his aching head. This lifetime was really weird. He had just seen the corpse of an ultimate warrior of shattering void tier that he suspected had been killed off in a battle royale against an uncountable number of heaven tier elites not too long ago, a great amount of level 9 spiritual tools floating out with the flow of an underground river, and there even appeared a rogue godly medicine and the formation of a strange fire. And now, there was a being that was likely above heaven tier within Hunyo's body, while he had an ultimate powerful entity, the Black Tower residing inside his body. It seemed as if shattering void tier had become cheap all of a sudden. Hunyo obviously did not have much patience. She only cultivated for a short while before stopping, and when she saw Ling Han was looking at her, she grinned and jumped into Ling Han's arms. She rubbed her stomach and declared, "Hungry." That's right. The little girl had not had any food for quite a few days. Cultivate obediently, and I'll go and cook. If you don't cultivate obediently, you won't get any meat. Ling Han issued a condition. Oh. Hunyo pouted, obviously not very happy. She did not like cultivation. It was too dull and boring. Ling Han went into the kitchen to cook. Since the glutton was back, the food that had accumulated like a little mountain here would most likely be completely finished within a few days. She guessed that Hunyo's appetite must have increased considerably after such a drastic transformation. He was already prepared, but the great increase to Hunyo's appetite still gave him a scare. Her appetite actually more than doubled. Thank goodness I have money now, and can take advantage of the third imperial prince's kindness. Otherwise, I really would not be able to keep this little girl fed, he said, shaking his head. When they were halfway done with their meal, the Lu sisters had also awakened. When they arrived at the kitchen, they were shocked and their faces could not help but twitch. That really was a little girl. When she saw the girls, Hunyo immediately moved as if she was protecting her food, her eyes glaring ferociously at the two girls. A low growl came out of her throat, and she had a violent expression that said, "If you dare to stretch out your hands, I will bite off your heads." Damn scoundrel, you really are a pervert. Lu Ru'er's face paled drastically. There was a little girl living in the home of a young man, so this was obviously a very big problem. I am not a pervert, just a bad man, Ling Han said, editing Gu Fenghua's trademark words. Little girl, come over here quickly, we'll protect you. Lu Ru'er beckoned a hand at Hunyo. However, in Hunyo's eyes, such a move was seen as a challenge, causing the little girl to leap onto the table. She had all 4 limbs on the table, and looked ready to move at any moment. Forget it, don't argue with someone ignorant. Ling Han picked Hunyo up, and stuffed a piece of meat into the little girl's mouth in passing, causing the little girl to instantly become happy as she chewed on it. Who are you calling ignorant? Lu Ru'er asked, not accepting Ling Han's opinion of her. Ling Han snickered and said, "The two of you have been recovering your wounds here in my place for quite a few days, right? Isn't it about time for you to pay rent or something of the sort?" "Hang, so you want money?" Lu Ru'er said in a derogatory tone. "How much do you want? Then I'll casually collect this amount per person." Ling Han raised a single finger. 1,000,000 coins? Lu Ru'er humphed. "Deal. However, once you take our money, we'll become your employers, so we will have the right to command you." "Che, 1,000,000 coins?" Ling Han shook his head. "You have to understand that if I hand you over, the two of you will definitely die, so what we're talking about now is the price of selling yourselves. Do you really think a mere 1,000,000 coins is appropriate?" Selling ourselves? You're the one selling yourself." Lu Ru'er suddenly paled, but immediately said, "Then how much do you want, 10 or 20 million?" She shocked even herself when she said 10 million. It was not because they could not earn such a large amount of money, but because they did not have so much money saved up, since they had just recently started their careers. That's wrong. Beauties like yourselves would have to be at least worth 100 million, right? Don't be modest with me. Why don't I deliver the two of you to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion to ask how good the business would be for two beauties in gushing spring tear? Ling Han appeared to be very impassioned and generous. Lu Ru'er blinked. She felt that agreeing and disagreeing were both not an option. If she agreed, where would she get so much money from? If she disagreed, then wouldn't that be lowering her own value? She did not have enough ability to adapt, and was instantly left stuttering, obviously at a loss at what to say. Brother Ling, don't bully my little sister so much, Lu Feng'er smiled faintly. You damn scoundrel, you were actually playing with me. Lu Ru'er finally reacted, an angered expression on her face. Silly girl, Ling Han shook his head. If you want to stay here, then you'll have to follow my rules. Doing something like entering without knocking would be what a scoundrel would do. Lu Ru'er knew that he was talking about how she had accidentally peeked at him bathing the night before, and could not help feeling very embarrassed. She pouted. She was not a scoundrel. Who would have guessed that there would be someone bathing in the kitchen in the middle of the night? Were you washing pig's feet, getting ready to cook pig trotters? When she thought this, she could not help but show a weird smile. This was what was called a mental victory. In the future, preparing all meals will be your responsibility, Ling Han said. After he told Hu Niu not to come into conflict with the other two girls, he told her to cultivate obediently. At first, he wanted to visit Mo Gao, but when he recalled that Mo Gao should have begun his seclusion to break through to gushing spring tear, he could only give up. Ling Han switched to a farther location to cultivate to avoid staying too close to the little girl. Chapter 153. Feng Yan's Background. Early that morning, the Imperial Guards arrived at the academy to apprehend Feng Yan, but encountered resistance from him. In the end, it became a big issue that even alerted Lian Guangzhu, who placed his full support behind Feng Yan and expelled the Imperial Guards from the academy grounds. It was either the Third Imperial Prince's command or Lady Yan's complaint that caused the Imperial Guards to come today to apprehend Feng Yan. Feng Yan had committed a great offense against these two high-ranking individuals just the day before, after all. Yet Feng Yan was actually so recklessly bold as to resist arrest, and Lian Guangzhu actually defended him fully. This was really such a great shock that no one could believe it. Where did Feng Yan get such courage from? And why would Lian Guangzhu protect him to the point that he did not mind going against the imperial family? Since neither Feng Yan nor Lian Guangzhu said a word, everyone could only make their wild guesses. Could it be that Feng Yan was Lian Guangzhu's illegitimate son? It was only barely over half a day, and this kind of gossip had already spread throughout the academy. After that, Feng Luo even issued a warrant to collect all the evidence that proved Ling Han's criminal behavior and misdeeds. Anyone who was willing to volunteer with information would be given a reward. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan had yet to know what had happened last night, so they were both puzzled and indignant. Is this Feng Luo a cockroach or something? He is obviously just a piece of trash, yet can always manage to frolic around. Ling Han was also at a loss for words. Feng Luo was undoubtedly expelled out of the academy, yet in the blink of an eye, he was enrolled back in again. That's because of Feng Yan, Lu Yutong pointed out. Whom exactly has this guy managed to cling to that even old man Lian would protect him to this extent? Ling Han said uncomprehendingly, even if he really was the old man's illegitimate son, he should not be doting on him to this extent. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan both rolled their eyes at him. Only Ling Han would dare say something like that about a spiritual pedestal tier elite. Now, Feng Luo declares that he will be collecting the proof of your misdeeds, obviously intending to embarrass you, Li Xichan said. Feng Luo did not have an official rank in the government, and the proof that he was collecting would not be considered valid at all. Thus, he was only planning to embarrass Ling Han and bring dishonor to his name. Ling Han rubbed his nose and said, "Looks like Feng Yan really considers me quite important. He not only wants to kill me, but also wants me to be completely defeated and fallen from grace." Both Lu Yutong and Li Xichan frowned. Now that Lian Guangzhu was covering for Feng Yan, even the Rain Emperor would have to give him some face. Thus, as Feng Yan did not break the laws of the empire openly, such as committing murder in the streets of the imperial city or something like that, he would be able to act like a tyrant, and it would be overlooked. Ling Han could actually do the same as well. He had the two big bosses of alchemy standing behind him, and in truth, had more confidence he could do so than Feng Yan. But it was obvious that Lian Guangzhu was not Feng Yan's main backer. Feng Yan's support should come from outside Rain Country, Ling Han said with a tone of certainty at the end. Feng Yan had once said boastfully that he would even be able to kill Ling Han in public after 3 months. What did that imply? It meant that he did not even care about the authority of the Rain Emperor. There was a powerful warrior of flower-blooming tier overseeing things for Rain Country, but since Feng Yan was able to ignore the imperial family of Rain Country, that obviously meant that the backer behind him would at least be in flower-blossoming tier, and there was no other person at this cultivation level in Rain Country aside from the mysterious member of the imperial family. Ling Han rubbed his chin. Should he go and get a license for an Earth-grade alchemist? If he had the status of an Earth-grade alchemist, even powerful warriors of spiritual infant tier would have to treat him courteously. What more a mere flower-blossoming tier martial artist? However, the highest level of license that could be achieved in Rain Country was black-grade high level, because there was no alchemist at a higher level than that. Thus, there was no one able to bear witness to his ability. Temporarily, the rank of black-grade high-level alchemist should be enough. I believe that even a flower-blossoming tier elite would have to give them some face, Ling Han thought. If he had the status of an alchemist to protect him, then at least no one would dare to oppose him openly. I had not planned to return to the path of alchemy in this life, but who asked me to be so eye-catching that I have already attracted big trouble at the mere level of element-gathering tier? He heaved a sigh, but there was only an uncaring expression on his face. In his last life, he had been an ultimate warrior of heaven tier, and in the last period of his life, he traveled to various dangerous historical sites, where he encountered dangers that were all 100 times more serious than what he was facing now. Yet, he had still managed to survive till now. As for Feng Yan, he would be only a small bump on his path to maturity. There were only a few things that Ling Han would care about now. The first one was that mysterious black tower, the second would be the spirit base in Hunyo's Dantian that had actually taken the form of a magnificent beauty who could even open her eyes, and the third would be what those 4 disciples of his had encountered. That Feng Luo is really too despicable. He is obviously a vile character. I will ask Master to take action and expel him. I don't believe that Master Lien would persist in taking him back into the martial arts department, Li Sichan said, unwilling to give in. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, No need, no need. I want to take a look at what kind of tricks these 2 brothers can come up with. Since Feng Yan wanted to kill him, he had no reason to be reserved. When he had accumulated enough power, he would be sure to kill Feng Yan and his brother. He would also deal with Hu Bo, who had dared to kill so many at the Ling clan residence. How could Ling Han spare him after such an offense? Aside from these 3, there was also Chen Yunxiang. It was also about time to sort this old man out. Ling Han turned to Lu Yutong and asked, What kind of business does the Chen clan do? Clothing, Lu Yutong answered instantly. Obviously, she had done her own research, and was still guilty about how she hadn't been able to deal with Chen Yunxiang previously. Do something for me. In front of every store belonging to the Chen clan, open a clothing store and sell the products at 10% below cost price, Ling Han said as he handed over some money to Lu Yutong. Lu Yutong immediately understood his purpose. He was planning to strike down the Chen clan financially. The reason why Chen Yunxiang had been able to succeed so many times was because of the wealth of the Chen clan, which allowed him to hire the members of the Earth and Water faction to help him kidnap little girls. If he lost all his wealth, then the Sun clan would only deign to grant him safety. All right. I know what to do, she said with a nod. However, this could possibly be a bottomless pit. Are you sure you want to use up your money like this? Ling Han smiled and said, Don't worry. Money is not a problem for me. For a high-ranking alchemist, money would of course be no issue. He would only need to concoct a few black-grade high-level alchemical pills, and it was guaranteed that people would be fighting over them. Lu Yutong was finally relieved. She was about to say something else, when she suddenly wrinkled her nose and inhaled deeply, before asking, Why is there female fragrance here? Oh, I just took in 2 homeless girls, Ling Han said causally. N. Lu Yutong and Li Sichan exchanged a look before putting on vigilant expressions. They asked at the same time, Where are they? When did they become so coordinated? Greetings, ladies. Lu Feng and her sister walked out together. For such great beauties all gathered in one space seemed to make the whole house a considerably brighter place. The four girls chattered continuously, and Ling Han was soon bored by their conversation. He walked out and Xiao, who knew suddenly raced out from somewhere to hang on to him. She kept swinging back and forth from her hold on his body like a monkey. Play! Play! The little girl kept waving Ling Han's arm, her expression pleading. All right, let's go play, Ling Han laughed loudly. He had just stepped outside and was about to leave when he saw a young man approach him. Upon seeing Ling Han, the young man immediately bowed down in respect and greeted, Zhu Wujiu hereby pays respect to master. Chapter 154. Zhu Wujiu convinced. Ling Han swept a glance over him, and could not help frowning as he said, Only in the 8th layer of element gathering tier? You're advancing a bit too slowly. Zhu Wujiu could not stop his face from twitching. It had only been 10+ days, and he had managed to directly leap from the late period of the 7th layer of element gathering tier to the peak period, and even managed to break through all the way to the 8th layer of element gathering tier. This was enough to make him ecstatic, and also made him finally believe Ling Han's words that he could really help him surpass Nangong Ji in half a year's time. He desired greater power. On one hand, he wanted to avenge his beloved, while on the other, desire for power was deeply engraved in the blood and bones of each martial artist in the first place. Thus, as soon as he had broken through to the 8th layer of element gathering tier, he went to see Ling Hanha would be too embarrassed to see Ling Han if he had not broken through first. But he had never imagined that Ling Han would still resent him for being too slow. AI, you have the constitution of Silver Moon, and the first time you start cultivating the Silver Moon arts, you should have experienced a sudden explosion of your bloodline which would stimulate a spike-like improvement in your cultivation level. But you have only advanced slightly. Looks like your bloodline is not very pure. Ling Han shook his head, looking a bit disappointed. But when he thought about it, this was actually very normal. After all, the Silver Moon race was long rumored to have been completely wiped out, so Zhu Wujiu's bloodline was definitely not very pure. Who knows, it may have been a recessive gene which allowed the bloodline to appear in him, while both his parents may very possibly only have normal constitution. Take this. Break through to Gushing Spring tier within 1 month. If you are unable to, you do not need to come see me again. Ling Han tossed a pill bottle over to him. There were 10 ancient clear pills inside this pill bottle. Break through to Gushing Spring tier in a single month. Zhu Wujiu experienced a shock. How could that be possible? He was sure he would be able to break through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier or even reach the peak period of the 9th layer within 1 month's time. But to break through to Gushing Spring tier? That required him to transform his origin nucleus into a gushing spring of origin power, and involved enough comprehension and understanding of his cultivation. Spending even 3 to 5 years, 8 or 10 years of Ento successfully breakthrough was already quite good, but a single month. Just look, there were so many disciples in Huyang Academy, but how many of them were actually in Gushing Spring tier? Less than 100, and the majority of these people were above 25 years old. But if he did not manage to break through to Gushing Spring tier in 1 month, then he would not even be qualified to become Ling Han's subordinate. Immediately, a strong wave of rebellious feelings rose up within Zhu Wujiu. If it had been anyone else, wouldn't he have died of happiness after winning himself a chance to free himself? But Zhu Wujiu was a man of his word, and he also had his pride. Being disregarded even for the lowly position of a subordinate, how could he still have face to stand tall and walk with an upright spine in future? All right. Within 1 month, I will definitely break through to Gushing Spring tier. He forced out through gritted teeth. Go on. Ling Han waved him off. Zhu Wujiu turned and left. Behind him, Ling Han smiled. With his alchemical pills and his deliberate provocation just now, this silly boy from the Silver Moon race should be able to break through to Gushing Spring tier in 1 month, right? Play. Play. Hunyo tugged at his hand, looking very displeased. All right, let's go play. Ling Han and Hunyo exited the academy. They toured around the imperial city once and he dropped in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion on the way. Why are you here? After being informed by the servants, Yun Shuang very quickly appeared in front of him. Ling Han shook his head and asked, Have you been beaten up or scolded by someone that you are venting your anger on me? You are the one that has been beaten up. Yun Shuang said irritatedly. She was irate about how Ling Han always appeared serene. Though she hated it when others would look pervertedly at her, as a beautiful woman, she would naturally have her own pride. However, when Ling Han looked at her, it was as if he was looking at air. She would of course be extremely displeased by this, and whenever she set eyes upon this young man, she would have the urge to grit her teeth. Here, this is the permanent pill that was promised to Lady Yen. Take it. Ling Han took out a jade bottle and placed it on the table. It's already concocted? Yun Shuang immediately asked, filled with pleasant surprise and no longer bothering about acting quarrelsome. An alchemical pill at this kind of level, would it still require a few days' preparation before beginning the concoction process? Ling Han clicked his tongue. Yun Shuang could not help but become suspicious. Even two big bosses of alchemy like Fu Yuanshang and Wu Songlin had shaken their heads at this permanent pill. But after only one night, Ling Han actually brought over the completed pill. Could he be lying? I can't be bothered to talk too long with a silly little girl like you. Just hand the pill over to Lady Yen. I'm leaving. Ling Han picked up Hunyou. The little girl had played too wildly and was tired out. She had fallen fast asleep. Silly little girl. Yun Shuang almost transformed into a vicious hag and pounced on him. This brat had to be blind. Couldn't he see her enchanting figure and curves? What kind of silly little girl have you seen that would have such protruding breasts and raised behind like her? And you are a silly boy who is still wet behind the ears, she countered. Bye, silly little girl. Ling Han waved at her and strode out. Wayaya, I'm going to die from fury. Yun Shuang stomped her feet in anger, but after a while she said to herself, whether it's real or fake, I'll let m'lady take a look at it first. She quickly went into a courtyard in the deepest parts of Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Lady Yen would usually be here if there was nothing that required her attention. Milady! She stepped into the courtyard and knocked lightly on the door. Come in. Lady Yan's voice was heard from within, and it sounded a bit tired and helpless. Yun Shuang pushed open the door and entered. It was a bedroom that she had stepped into. Lady Yen was currently sitting at the bedside, while on the bed lay a delicate and pretty-looking youth who looked to be only about 15 or 16 years old. The youth's appearance actually had a 40 to 50% resemblance with Lady Yen. Lady Yen, Ling Han came over just now and delivered the permanent pill, Yun Shuang said softly, though she knew that no matter how loudly she spoke, she would not be able to awaken that sleeping youth. What? Lady Yen suddenly stood, her face filled with shock. This is the permanent pill that Ling Han has brought over. Yun Shuang took out the pill bottle that Ling Han had given to her. Though she was very doubtful about the authenticity of this pill bottle, she did not speak out of turn and left it for Lady Yen to decide. Lady Yen extended a hand and received the pill bottle. Because she was too excited, her hands were even uncontrollably trembling. She had just glimpsed a sliver of hope yesterday night, but had never imagined that this sliver of hope would become reality today. It was not that she had not considered the possibility that this pill might be fake, but in front of the colossal hope, she chose to ignore this possibility. She opened the bottle, and inside lay only 3 pills. They were yellowish-red in color and had a sweet and bitter smell. This color and smell is the same as what Master Yongjun had described. She looked even more excited. She looked at the youth that was asleep on the bed, gritted her teeth and said, Shuang, get me some water. Yun Shuang knew that Lady Yen had made her decision, and quickly went to pour a cup of clear water and brought it over. Lady Yen pried open the youth's teeth, and squeezed in a permanent pill. Meanwhile, Yun Shuang neared with the cup. She tipped the cup, and the pill was washed down into the youth's body by the water. The 2 females looked at the youth anxiously, and after only a while, the eyelids of the youth actually twitched. Shuang, did you see? Did you see? Lady Yen asked in a trembling voice. Yes, milady. I saw it. Yun Shuang nodded quickly. 10 years. 10 years. Tears rolled down Lady Yan's cheeks. Tian'er can finally wake up. Congratulations, milady. Yun Shuang smiled widely. Chapter 155. Slander. What do you girls think? Is elder brother disciple Feng Yan really Master Lian's illegitimate son? Inside the female hostel of Huyang Academy, a young girl with a freckled face asked the other 3 girls with her, a gossipy expression all over her face. If Ling Han was here, he would definitely recognize that one of the girls here was Shen Ziyan. I would assume so. If not, why would Master Lian be so protective over him? That would mean going against the imperial family. A young girl whose hair was tied in 2 braids said. Maybe, but who knows if he might be the illegitimate son of his illegitimate son? A green-clad young girl asked. Shen Ziyan did not say a word. She had been the most talented student in Grey Cloud Academy, which was something that had always given her great pride. But from the moment she entered Huyang Academy, she knew that she was only the frog at the bottom of a well. Anyone here was no weaker than her in terms of talent, and the majority was stronger than her. Moreover, she came from a lowly background, and in this academy that had gathered all the youths from noble backgrounds, she was naturally unable to raise her head. Within a short month, all her pride and arrogance had been rubbed out. What kind of enmity does elder brother disciple Feng have with that Ling Han that he would let his brother collect evidence of Ling Han's misdeeds, and would even promise a reward for information? The braided girl asked curiously. When Xin Ziyan heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. Younger sister disciple Shen, you came from Deyuan City, and elder brother disciple Feng and that Ling Han also came from there. Do you know what kind of grievances exist between them? The freckled young girl asked Shen Ziyan, suddenly recalling that the latter was also from Deyuan City. Shen Ziyan's expression darkened, and she said, Ling Han is an ignorant, incompetent, despicable and vulgar character. Do you all know how he managed to enroll into the academy? No. The other 3 girls shook their heads. He begged his father, who used his own life to trade for this opportunity, to enroll in the academy. Shen Ziyan declared, smiling coldly. What? How could someone like that exist? The other 3 girls gasped in shock. Of course. Shen Ziyan continued to smear Ling Han's name. Have you ever heard of the Dark Demon Forest? N. We've heard of it before. That is a very dangerous place that not even spiritual pedestal tier elites would dare to enter. The 3 girls nodded. I heard that more than 100 years ago, a member of the Huyang Academy entered the Dark Demon Forest and lost an ultimate treasure inside. So Ling Han's father managed to make a deal with the academy. He would enter the Dark Demon Forest to retrieve that ultimate treasure, and Ling Han would be able to enter Huyang Academy, Xin Ziyan said. He's really too despicable. What an unfilial son. The freckled young girl and the other 2 girls all shook their heads at this. He was practically scum, actually asking his father to take such a great risk and endure formidable dangers just for himself to be able to enter the academy. Shen Ziyan smirked coldly. Rumor had the highest demand, and within a few days, Ling Han would become a rat that everyone would want to throttle. She despised Ling Han. This despise had begun since the betrothal contract between Ling Han and herself had been set down. However, after Ling Han's abrupt rise to power, this despise had transformed completely into hatred. She absolutely did not want others to laugh at her behind her back, mocking her for being blind and missing out on the perfect husband. Thus, she wanted to utterly discredit Ling Han and for him to lose all standing and good reputation. Ling Han advanced very quickly, and after a mere 4 days, he had broken through to the 7th layer of element gathering tier. But he was not the fastest. There was another that was even more of a monster than he was. Hunyao. The little girl's spirit base was not only very weird, it also possessed an ability to absorb spiritual chi that was no weaker than Ling Han. Moreover, after she had hatched out from the egg, she had somehow obtained a cultivation technique that was completely able to suit the rapid speed at which a heaven-grade spirit base absorbed spiritual chi. Merely from this aspect, she was definitely not any slower than Ling Han. More importantly, she could still eat. Her ability of being able to transform any food that she had consumed into her own origin power had not disappeared after she had managed to awaken her spirit base. On the other hand, this ability had become even more powerful. Thus, after a mere 5 days, the little girl had reached the 9th layer of body refining tier. However, he did not know if the barrier separating the various major tiers would be able to detain her for a while. After all, breaking through this barrier involved the comprehension and understanding of her cultivation level, and energy was not the only thing necessary to break through. And yet, this was completely no issue for her. After a day, Hunyo quietly stepped into element-gathering tier, so smoothly as if it was as easy as drinking water for her. Ling Han did not know what to say anymore. Could Hunyo also be the reincarnation of a powerful, ultimate existence like him? That was not impossible. After all, the spirit base in the little girl's dantian was really too weird. It not only took the form of a magnificent beauty, it could even open its eyes and had almost obliterated Ling Han's spirit. And in the eyes of the Lu sisters, these two people, both big and small, were undoubtedly both monsters. They had watched as the cultivation levels of these two soared within a short few days' time, making them feel that this was completely unreal. Indeed, their cultivation levels were higher than Ling Han and Hunyo. However, one had to know that this was possible only because they had used up all the resources of the Falling Flower Court, which allowed them to reach a high layer in Gushing Spring tier below the age of 20. However, their future advancement could only depend on their own efforts and talent. But when they looked at the monstrous speed that these two were advancing with, it was obvious they could continue to advance in this manner even in the higher realms, and that was the really terrifying thing. Ling Han wanted to use Hunyo's cultivation technique as a reference, but the little girl could not describe it clearly no matter how hard she tried. She could only express that it was as if this cultivation technique was something she knew instinctively, and naturally knew how to circulate this cultivation technique. She did not need to understand it, nor was she able to recite it out. On the other side, because of Shen Ziyan, Ling Han's name as a despicable son had spread throughout the academy, and everyone thought that Ling Han had forced his father to sell his life to be able to enter into the academy, causing them to be disgusted by his unfilial actions. In this manner, Feng Luo became the representative of righteousness. The matter of Wei He Li's expulsion had even been brought to the surface again, as some suggested for a retrial to take place. Who knew if Wei He Lu had been wronged? What do we do now? Everyone is talking bad about you. Lu Yutong came over and gritted her teeth naturally as she mentioned the rumors. Anyone who had come from Deyuan City would naturally know that Ling Han had entered the academy because he had gotten the first place in the tournament, but the mass spreading of rumors confused right from wrong, and no one would believe the truth. I know I am innocent, and if others want to wag their tongues, just let them be. But if they dare to say these things in front of me, I'll punch out their whole mouth of teeth, Ling Han said uncaringly. As someone who had once been an ultimate warrior of heaven tier, he would naturally not care about what others think of him. When he displayed invincible martial arts ability, all rumors would be naturally destroyed. Ko. A knock was heard from the door, and because the door was not closed, a beautiful face popped in and said, "Is Mr. Ling here?" Lu Yutong turned to look at her, and could not stop a strange expression from appearing on her. Ling Han's luck with the ladies was really a bit too strong. He had just stepped into the imperial city for a short time, and he had already gotten to know so many different beautiful girls. Ling Han also looked at this visitor, and could not help but smile as he said, "Silly little girl, why are you looking for me?" The beautiful girl was Yun Shuang. At first, she had been in a good mood, but when she heard Ling Han's words, she immediately became furious, and said snappily, "Milady would like to invite you to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion so she can thank you personally." "Oh, when?" Ling Han asked. "If Mr. Ling does not have anything important going on, then please come over tonight." "All right." Ling Han nodded. Indeed, he did not have anything pressing to do tonight. Chapter 156. Go earn money at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. "I'll go with you," Lu Yutong immediately said. She would naturally know what kind of place the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was, a money-squandering establishment for men. How could she let Ling Han go without worry? It was only now that Yun Shuang turned to look at Lu Yutong, bowed faintly and said, "So it is the princess of the Lu clan. Shuang has been impolite." Lu Yutong looked a bit awkward at being addressed so because she did not know Yun Shuang. However, in her eyes, all girls who came from the Cherishing Flower Pavilion were unbearably filthy and not characters she would deign to know anyways. Moreover, Yun Shuang was intending to drag Ling Han to play at that kind of place, which would increase her antipathy even more. Thus, she only gave a reserved nod, and did not even spare her a courteous reply. Yun Shuang could not help but show an enraged expression. She was Lady Yan's adopted daughter, and did not need to receive customers. Thus, she similarly had a high opinion of herself. However, In the eyes of a noble princess like Lu Yutong, she was indeed unable to escape the reality that she came from the red light district. This was very upsetting to her. Lady Yan has made it clear. We are only inviting Mr. Ling alone. She did not clash with Lu Yutong head-on, but simply used the name of Lady Yan to tactfully decline her. Nyo go too. Hu Nyo scrambled out and clung onto Ling Han's arm, completely looking like a spoiled child. That's right. We'll all go. Lu Yutong emphasized. With Hu Nyo there, even if Ling Han was driven wild by passion, he would have to behave himself. Just let them come with me. Ling Han picked Hu Nyo up. The older one would still listen to me, but even I won't be able to settle the younger one. She 11. Hu Nyo's eyes lit up and said happily, Meet. Yun Shuang did not mind if Hu Nyo went. After all, the one who had incurred her displeasure was Lu Yutong, but since Ling Han had already spoken, she could only say, Then, please come to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion tonight for a chat, all three of you. I shall take my leave for now. When she had finally left, Lu Yutong looked to be in a slightly better mood. Ling Han could not help but grin and asked, My little female attendant, are you jealous? Who's jealous? Lu Yutong's beautiful face turned completely red instantly, as brightly splendid as a flower, becoming an extremely captivating picture. Ling Han laughed loudly and, changing the subject, said, How has the business of the clothing stores been? Very good. We've already managed to take over most of the business of the Chen clan. However, the Chen clan would definitely not sit by quietly and wait for their end. Either a price war would follow, or they would send someone to create a disturbance at our stores. Lu Yutong frowned slightly. After all, these stores did not have the symbol of the Lu clan on them. Ling Han smiled softly and said, If they decide to stimulate a price war, it's fine. I was not planning to earn money from this business anyways. But if they dare to send someone to make a disturbance, that would give me the best excuse to pay them a visit and give them a thrashing. Lu Yutong finally understood. Indeed, if the stores were smashed, then as the owner, Ling Han would of course have a legitimate excuse to make a move. But the Chen clan would most likely not make a move themselves, but rather send over members of the Earth and Water faction. Earth and Water faction. A cold light flickered in Ling Han's eyes. This faction would be willing to even do jobs like kidnapping little girls, which was evidence enough of the extent of filth in its inner workings. He had already thought of obliterating this faction. I deduced that the Chen clan would not resort to force, but would rather induce a price war to see if we would back out on our own. I'll take advantage of this period of time to first deal with the Earth and Water faction then. Lu Yutong could not help but look worried at this, and said, The Earth and Water faction has relations with all 8 great clans. If you move against the Earth and Water faction, the 8 great clans may interfere. Ling Han was very displeased. In his last life, when had he ever experienced having his hands tied up like this? But who asked him to be only an element-gathering tier now? Even in a small place like Rain Country, he was not able to have a large amount of influence. Let's go to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion first. I've been spending money like water these days, so I need to earn some money first, he said after a moment of thought. Going to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion to earn money? A strange expression came over Lu Yutong's face. Who would not be spending money at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion? But this guy was the exact opposite, actually thinking of earning money at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. However, when she recalled Ling Han's terrifying ability at alchemy, earning money at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion seemed a very natural thing for him to do. Let's go. Since someone is treating us tonight, let's just have lunch outside as well. Ling Han stepped out the door, Hu Nyo in his arms. What about the 2 girls in the house? Lu Yutong caught up with him. She was of course referring to the Lu sisters. Oh, I was already kind enough to take the 2 of them in, and I still have to take care of their daily meals? Just let them cook for themselves, Ling Han said with a laugh. A captivating smile suddenly appeared on Lu Yutong's face. It was obvious that Ling Han had completely zero interest in the Lu sisters. Otherwise, he would not act this way. This discovery made her very happy, and even she herself felt it was very peculiar that she would be so happy. With 2 beauties as company, Ling Han arrived at the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Young Master Han. He had just stepped onto that long and wide flight of stairs when he saw an old man in his 60s also coincidentally descending the stairs. When the old man saw Ling Han, he hurriedly approached him and greeted him very respectfully. There were 4 others behind this old man, and they were all his disciples. When they saw their master act this way, an expression of utter astonishment appeared on their faces. This was Grandmaster Yuan Yuan they were talking about, a genuine black-grade middle-level alchemist, someone who was just one step away from being equal with the 2 biggest bosses of alchemy of Rain Country. But when they saw how Yuan Chu could not help but bow deeply, his face filled with utter respect, it was obviously not faked. That was indeed a completely sincere display of reverence. If Ling Han had been Wu Songlin, or Fu Yuan Shang, it would not be strange. Alchemy was the same as martial arts. The gap of different levels was like the gap between heaven and earth, but Ling Han was only a young brat. How could they not be completely dumbstruck? They've seen a ghost. They've definitely seen a ghost. They all rubbed their eyes harshly, completely unable to believe this scene was real. You are... Ling Han only recognized this person to be one of the alchemists who had observed his alchemy techniques that day, but he did not know who exactly he was. Pooh! All of them felt like they were going to pass out. Just take a look. Grandmaster Yuan Chu's face was practically about to touch your shoes. And you don't even know who Grandmaster Yuan Chu was? This really was. They didn't even know what else they could say anymore. My name is Yuan Chu, and I had the good fortune to witness young Master Han concocting alchemical pills some time ago. I have benefited greatly from observing young Master Han, but I was completely immersed in young Master Han's techniques that day and did not even know when you had left. I have committed a grave offense. Please forgive me, young Master Han. Yuan Chu Yuan said in fear and trepidation. Hiss, everyone was once again shocked. With Grandmaster Yuan Chu's status, he was actually apologizing for not personally seeing Ling Han off. Who was this brat? He was absolutely terrifying. Ling Han smiled and said, It's all right. Young Master Han, have you come to concoct alchemical pills again today? Yuan Chu asked, filled with great anticipation. He had an indescribable confidence that as long as he could watch Ling Han concoct alchemical pills a few more times, he would definitely be able to break through to become a black-grade high-level alchemist. Thus, he would of course be very proactive. Could this old man be able to tell the future? Ling Han smiled and replied, That's right. I want to concoct a type of alchemical pill. Please. Yuan Chu hurriedly said respectfully. With Yuan Chu escorting him, Ling Han quickly entered the main hall. Young Master Han. Xiaofan immediately came over to receive him, her face filled with pleasant surprise. As she had already been promoted to the position of a minor manager, she no longer needed to greet customers at the door. However, she had long wanted to see Ling Han again, and so had kept standing guard at the door recently. Finally, she had gotten her wish. Ling Han nodded at her, causing the corners of Lu Yutong's lips to rise slightly. This guy was really an expert at making women fall for him. Chapter 157. Foundation Building Pill. Ling Han only nodded at Xiaofan before proceeding to the 3rd floor of the palace, escorted by Yuan Chu. This was where high-ranking alchemists would concoct alchemical pills and rest. How about this? I won't limit the number of people today. You all can observe me concoct alchemical pills, and I'll simply accept an observation fee of 1,000,000 silver coins, Ling Han said to Yuan Chu. Pooh, once again, those 4 disciples of Yuan Chu choked. It was simply observing the pill concoction process, and you want to collect a fee of 1,000,000 silver coins. Were you trying to rob them? Even Lu Yutong's lips twitched at this. 1,000,000 silver coins for observing him concoct pills once. Even if there were only 10 people, Ling Han would be able to earn 10 million coins for every time he allowed them to observe, and observing him for 10 times would allow him to earn 100 million. 100 million. The Lu clan was a large clan and had many businesses under their name, so their monthly income was definitely not just a mere 100 million coins. However, if you were talking about net profit, then there was definitely not as much as 100 million, and it was far below such a colossal amount of money. The earnings of a single person were able to equal the earnings of an entire clan. No wonder Ling Han was so confident he would be able to utterly defeat the Chen clan in terms of finances. It was really too easy for him to earn money. But still, would Yuan Chu actually agree to such a condition? Really? Yuan Chu's eyes widened, an expression of pleasant surprise on his face. Just 1,000,000 coins. Damn. Lu Yutong and his 4 disciples suddenly felt like they were going to pass out. Yuan Chu actually thought 1,000,000 coins was a bargain. That was natural. If he could manage to observe Ling Han concoct alchemical pills for a few more times, he'd be able to advance up the ranks. How could that kind of benefit be measured in terms of money? Moreover, once he managed to advance to the next level, he'd be able to concoct even higher-grade alchemical pills. Plus, when an alchemist advanced one level, the price of the pills he could concoct would also soar to a whole new level. One could definitely say that every high-level alchemist was extremely wealthy. But the majority of alchemists were not hoarders of their wealth, and would instead use their immeasurable wealth to improve their ability as an alchemist. But when an alchemist had reached black grade, which of them would not have a few dozen millions in savings? 1,000,000 was absolutely nothing to them. Ling Han was also not one who would attach a lot of importance to monetary wealth. Money was a worldly item, and when one's ability reached flower blossoming tier, mere money would not be able to buy the cultivation resources one needed. At flower blossoming tier and beyond, one would have to trade for the resources he needed with something else that his trading partner wanted. Of course, money was still quite useful to him now. Otherwise, Ling Han would not demand an observation fee. Yuan immediately went off to call the other alchemists. Very quickly, the various black-grade alchemists all arrived one after another. However, there was a pitifully small number of yellow-grade alchemists. There was only Li Xichan, Qi Zhantai, and a few others, and the last to arrive was Fu Yuanshang. Old Fu, you're right on time. Help me collect money, Ling Han said, without any kind of reservations at all. At this, those 4 disciples of Yuan Chu really fainted. That was Fu Yuanshang he was addressing, one of the 2 big bosses of alchemy in Rain Country, but in Ling Han's mouth, he had become Old Fu. Meanwhile, Fu Yuanshang stepped forward, his expression all smiles. It was his honor to be able to serve a Grandmaster alchemist. Moreover, whom among all these high-ranking alchemists had not begun from the position of an alchemist's apprentice? They had all started from doing odd jobs and assisting a higher-ranking alchemist, so it was nothing new to them. Thus, no one felt any disdain for Fu Yuanshang. On the other hand, they were all indescribably envious. To be able to serve a Grandmaster alchemist, what an enviable task. Everyone delightedly paid the observation fee, while only Li Xichan and Qi Zhantai were exempted from paying. Black-grade alchemists really did not lack monetary wealth. Today, I'm going to concoct the foundation building pill. All of you should know that this is a black-grade high-level alchemical pill, right? I'll also get the license of a black-grade high-level alchemist while at it, Ling Han said. He would be hitting 2 birds with 1 stone in this manner. Foundation building pill. When they heard the words foundation building pill from Ling Han's mouth, all of them bore expressions of utter shock and astonishment. There were many different types of black-grade high-level alchemical pills, and of course the level of difficulty in concocting different black-grade high-level pills varied greatly. There were 4 different levels of difficulty and they were easy, difficult, extremely difficult, and practically impossible. Those alchemical pills that fitted into the level of practically impossible were actually close to the level of earth-grade alchemical pills. Thus, an alchemist who could successfully concoct an alchemical pill in this category was almost definitely able to advance to become an earth-grade alchemist. Foundation building pill was precisely one of those pills in the practically impossible category. This kind of alchemical pill could help a spiritual ocean-tier alchemist build his foundations to prepare for the construction of his spiritual pedestal. It belonged to one of the rarest types of alchemical pills that could help a spiritual ocean-tier martial artist break through to spiritual pedestal tier. The reason why foundation building pill was considered close to the level of earth grade was firstly because of the level of difficulty in concocting such a pill, and secondly because of the effects of the completed pill. For a martial artist, 3 types of alchemical pills were the most valuable for them. Firstly, the type that would help them increase their cultivation, secondly, the type that would assist them in comprehending martial arts techniques, and thirdly, the type that could assist them in breaking through to the next level. If one would rank these 3 types of pills in order of importance and value, then it would be the exact opposite order. The most valuable, and also the rarest, was the type of pill that would help a martial artist break through to the next level. The type of pill that would extend one's lifespan was not included in this division because only natural treasures would have that kind of effect. If these natural treasures were concocted into alchemical pills, the effect would be the exact opposite. Everyone here had heard of the foundation pill before, but there was no one capable of successfully concocting it in a small place like Rain Country, and this included the two local big bosses of alchemy as well. If this kind of alchemical pill could be mass-produced for sale, the large number of spiritual pedestal tier elites that would appear in Rain Country could be imagined. This could very possibly overturn the balance of power in Rain Country. Even merely the thought of it caused these people to shiver. A single alchemist had the ability to completely change the power structure of a nation. It sounded like a fantasy. I need these ingredients, Ling Han said to Fu Yuanshang. The reason why the foundation building pill was so close to the level of Earth grade was because of the level of difficulty involved in concocting such a pill and its effects. However, there was not much difference between the ingredients necessary to concoct it and the ingredients necessary to concoct any other black grade high-level pill. So the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion would definitely have the necessary ingredients available. And true enough, Fu Yuansheng immediately nodded, and waved his hand to command someone to retrieve the ingredients that Ling Han needed from their storage room. How much do they cost? Ling Han asked, smiling. How can we accept young Master Han's money? Fu Yuansheng hurriedly waved his hands in refusal. Yet Ling Han was adamant and said, You must accept. Only if the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion accepted his payment would the foundation building pill belong to him entirely. How much could the ingredients for this little thing cost? 1 million? 2 million? But for the completed pill, even if it was auctioned off for 10 million, it would be considered a bargain. It was guaranteed that a large number of people would be fighting to buy it. Fu Yuanshang could only smile sheepishly. He was intending to take the completed pill to study. One had to understand that the success rate for pills close to the level of Earth grade was shockingly low. If the full number of pills that could be produced in a single furnace was 10, then it would be wonderful if there was a single completed pill that was successfully concocted. 2 would be considered a logic-defying accomplishment. The ingredients for a black-grade high-level pill were still very expensive. The ingredient value for a single furnace could be as high as 3 million, and if the furnace exploded during the concoction process, that would mean the waste of a whole 3 million coins. But if the pill was successfully concocted, the alchemist would be able to earn not only his investment back, but also a colossal profit. That was what a high-grade alchemical pill was worth, especially the rarer types of high-grade alchemical pills. Ling Han was completely doing business without any kind of capital. He came empty-handed, and with his observation fee, he earned 18 million in one go. Now, he was only paying 3 million out of this 18 million he had already earned. Moreover, with his ability, what would a pill that was merely close to the level of Earth grade count as? Even if he only managed to produce 3 pills. Just the thought of the value was terrifying enough. Please observe closely, everyone. I am going to begin now, Ling Han said. Because all these people had paid to observe him, it was only right for him to warn them beforehand. All of them opened their eyes as wide as possible. They would not only be able to observe a grandmaster's techniques of alchemy, but would also be able to bear witness to the birth of a furnace of pills close to Earth grade. Merely the thought of it was enough to make them shiver in excitement. Ling Han's expression gradually became utterly serious. He was never negligent in matters related to alchemy. After taking a deep breath, he suddenly moved. His movements suddenly turned smooth and incredibly natural, filled with a unique kind of beauty that was pleasing to the eye. It was as if his movements were in line with some unknown law of nature. Chapter 158. Concoction. Heavens, how could merely separating the ingredients look so beautiful? My goodness, to purify 7 different ingredients at the same time. What, I thought purifying 7 different ingredients at the same time was only meant to speed up the concoction process a bit. But smelling this herbal aroma, it seems like the ingredients are far purer than those purified in the usual manner. This is too shocking. Those who had gasped out in shock were the few black-grade low-level alchemists who had not managed to observe Ling Han's concoction process the last time. The other black-grade middle-level alchemists all bore haughty expressions, secretly calling the people who had exclaimed in shock a group of country bumpkins who had never seen the world. Yet they did not recall that when it had been their first time seeing Ling Han concoct an alchemical pill, their reactions were also the same as these people, making a fuss about nothing, one moment erupting in clamor, and the next stunned into silence. However, as Ling Han proceeded further, all of them kept their eyes wide open, staring determinedly at Ling Han. This included Fu Yuan Sheng. Every move that Ling Han made seemed to guide along their focus, which would follow every move Ling Han made. In their eyes, Ling Han was no longer just a wet behind-the-ears youth, but an almighty alchemist of indomitable spirit. Every move he made was filled with an air of perfection, exuding a beautiful rhythm that only alchemists could feel. That's right. It was rhythm, or what was so-called tempo. Alchemy could be claimed as a kind of art. An art of controlling flames, an art of observing as the various ingredients transformed and merged together under high heat. It was an art filled with a very unique rhythm of its own. However, everyone here could not manage to display that feeling of rhythm. They were only following the written instructions, doing everything as what the pill formula described. They would put in specific ingredients at the time that was written on the pill formula, use flames of a certain temperature at a certain time. Everything they did was done mechanically and stiffly. Yet Ling Han had stepped beyond these limitations. Sometimes, he would obviously not be following the instructions of the pill formula strictly, but through a strange rhythm that linked all his actions together, it was a display that was too amazing for words. Grandmaster Alchemist. No, no, no. Almighty Alchemist. Or even, Alchemist Emperor. They all nodded their heads. If it was not for the fact that Ling Han was too young and his cultivation level too low, perhaps he would be able to concoct Earth-grade pills now, or even the mythical Heaven-grade pills. When they thought this, they all could not help but experience shock. Theoretically, an alchemist in element gathering tier would only be able to concoct yellow-grade high-level pills. This had nothing to do with the alchemist's ability, but was completely determined by the alchemist's cultivation level. There was nothing that could be done about it. If an alchemist's cultivation level was not high enough, he would not be able to produce a high enough temperature for higher-grade pills. Thus, the only result would be Ling Han's failure. But when they looked at the brilliant alchemic abilities that Ling Han had already displayed, he really did not seem like someone who would try out something even though he obviously knew it would fail. Unless could it be? They all stared at Ling Han closely as a possibility rose up in their minds. Hong! A crimson flame suddenly erupted from Ling Han's palm. It was the strange fire. As expected. All the alchemists exhaled in shock as they finally understood why Ling Han would dare to concoct an alchemical pill so close to Earth grade and where his confidence came from. Ling Han's movements became faster and faster, and more sweat beaded on his forehead. Due to the high heat rising from the furnace, signs of dehydration once again appeared on him as even his lips cracked slightly. It felt like a blur to the eyes of all the others. The rapid speed at which Ling Han was moving caused them to slightly feel as if they were unable to follow his moves. This was because they not only had to observe carefully each move that Ling Han made, but understand the rationale and logic behind each and every move. Just contemplate for a moment about one move in their heads, and they would have missed out on quite a number of consecutive movements from Ling Han. But that was all right. If they were able to learn one or two moves, it would be enough for them to study for quite a while and drastically increase their own ability as alchemists. The 1,000,000 coins that they had spent was completely worth it. Hong, hong, hong. Flames continuously flickered and appeared on Ling Han's hand. Sometimes the flames would be extraordinarily strong, while at other times, they would appear very weak. It was not that he had lost control over his flames. On the contrary, this was proof that the level of control he had over the temperature of the flames had reached the level of perfection. That's right. When my fusion with the strange fire has advanced to another level, guiding it would have a kind of feeling like it was done completely freely and effortlessly, Ling Han thought. He actually still had the room to think of something else. When others concocted alchemical pills, they would all be putting their whole focus on the concoction process. Being distracted for the slightest moment could mean the furnace exploding and having wasted all their previous efforts. But who asked Ling Han's alchemy standards to be too high? He could even concoct heaven-grade alchemical pills, so this was naturally a piece of cake to him. In fact, he was only thinking now. If he actually wanted to, he could completely give a lecture while he was still in the midst of the concoction process. However, if he actually did that, it was likely he would be scaring everyone here to death. Because this was a pill that was close to Earth grade. After half an hour, Ling Han's right hand suddenly trembled, and 3 different flames shot out. They were all of different colors, and it looked as if he was setting off fireworks. 3 Fire Guide. This was of course not as simple as it looked. The specifics of it still lay in Ling Han's personal techniques. This was of course not to be taught to outsiders. Pill completed. Ling Han did not immediately lift the lid of the furnace. The higher the grade of alchemical pills, the better their effects would be when they were allowed to stay in the still warm furnace after being completed until they had cooled naturally. Meanwhile, he began to meditate, recovering the origin power and mental energy that he had expended. How many completed pills could there be? From the look of the ingredients, there should be 8 completed pills in total. That's right. There should be 8 completed pills, but taking into account the level of difficulty for concocting a pill so close to Earth grade, managing to produce 1 completed pill would be amazing enough. 1 completed pill with quality above 5 stars could be considered successful enough. When they saw Ling Han had finally finished the concoction process, those alchemists who had withheld their words for such a long time finally began to talk. They were all discussing whether or not Ling Han had succeeded. If the furnace had exploded, that would mean that everything was wasted. But even if the furnace had not exploded, that did not automatically mean it was a success. Possibly, the completed pill may not even have the lowest quality of 1 star. However, because Ling Han was still meditating, none of them dared to rashly step forward and open up the furnace to find out. Some of the more impatient ones were already starting to fidget where they were standing. After another 10+ minutes, Ling Han finally opened his eyes. He smiled softly at them and said, "I know that you are all very curious." All of them smiled sheepishly. But this time also involved Ling Han getting the license of a black-grade high-level alchemist, so it was no wonder they were curious. "Young Master Han, don't leave us hanging anymore. I'm about to die of anxiety," Fu Yuanshang said with a laugh. This was also what everyone else was thinking to say. Ling Han pushed the alchemy furnace slightly forward and said, "Then you may all look now." All of them hurriedly pressed forwards. However, there was really too many of them, and the furnace was really too small. Pang 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 pang. Suddenly, a lot of heads crashed into one another, causing those who had suffered from this accident to grab onto their heads and shout, "Don't cram in! One after another!" Because of his cultivation level of spiritual pedestal tier, Fu Yuanshang managed to snatch the alchemy furnace, causing the others to silently curse inwardly. However, who asked Fu Yuanshang to be a black-grade high-level alchemist, a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier, and someone that had higher status and was more powerful than them? Fu Yuanshang was a bit nervous, and even the hand he stretched out was trembling slightly. All of a sudden, he lifted the lid of the furnace. "What?" he immediately gasped out in shock. His eyes were wide and perfectly round, and an expression of utter disbelief appeared on his face. "Master Fu, what is it? Could it be that there isn't even 1 completed pill?" All of them asked hurriedly. If it was not for the fact that they were a bit scared of Fu Yuanshang's status and power, they really wanted to snatch the furnace from him. Fu Yuanshang did not utter one word, and after a long time, he finally bore an expression of utter reverence as he said, "Young Master Han is almighty in alchemy. My admiration for you is incomparable." He lowered the furnace and showed it to the others. And inside, there shockingly lay 9 perfectly round alchemical pills. They all grabbed onto their heads and exclaimed in shock. They all looked at Ling Han with heated gazes, as if they were looking at a god of alchemy. In fact, although their guess was not accurate, it was not far from the truth. Ling Han stood up and said, all right. I've collected the money and you've watched my performance, so I should take my leave now." He walked over and retrieved the pills, placing them in a jade bottle. Then he turned and said to Fu Yuanshang, "When the license approval is done, send me the badge." Fu Yuanshang quickly agreed very respectfully, as if he was an alchemist's apprentice who had just started learning from his master. Ling Han left with Hu Niu in his arms. The little girl had already fallen asleep in Lu Yutong's arms after getting bored. However, when they arrived at the restaurant and she smelt the enticing aroma of food, the little girl's nose twitched and she immediately awoke. "Meat! Meat!" she called out in delight. After satisfying Hu Niu's gluttonous appetite, the three of them went to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Ling Han was not planning to keep these 9 foundation building pills for himself, and so was naturally going to sell them off. And for this kind of rare alchemical pill, they belonged to the category of having no lack of buyers with no one willing to sell, so how could he be selling it cheaply for a named price? He was of course going to auction them off to the highest bidder. In the Imperial City, there was no auction house better than the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. However, if he decided to auction them off, there would need to be a period of advertising and publicity, so he would not be able to immediately earn back what he had spent. But it was all right. Ling Han had just earned over 10 million moments ago, and this was more than enough to support those clothing stores of his that were making losses for quite some time. What do the 2 honorable customers wanted to buy? A worker immediately stepped forward to greet them. Hu Niu was naturally overlooked by him. Ling Han smiled and said, "I have some alchemical pills to auction off, so please let your appraiser come to assess my alchemical pills." Alchemical pills? Hee. There incidentally stood a couple beside them. The man looked to be in his 40s and with a disdainful expression he said, "What kind of alchemical pills could a young man bring? Don't shame yourself in this kind of place." He swept an eye over Lu Yutong, and a stunned expression appeared on his features. "This is Fan Dongping, Grandmaster Fan, a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist." The woman beside him immediately introduced. She was quite good-looking, but her makeup was a bit overdone. The worker was a bit embarrassed. It was the freedom of the customers to decide what they wanted to auction, as long as the item they wanted to auction was found to be up to the standard of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion after appraisal. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion had a fixed commission rate anyways. However, a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist was not someone he could offend either. Thus, he first raised his clasped hands in Fan Dongping's direction, and said, "I shall go and ask appraiser Ma to come over." Then he quickly escaped. Fan Dongping looked very arrogant, and from the corner of his eye, he glanced at Lu Yutong, hoping to see an expression of astonishment appear on her face. However, he was disappointed. This beauty that seemed as cold as ice did not have any change in her expression. The gaudy woman stared at Lu Yutong in jealousy. This woman was more beautiful than her, more graceful, and most importantly, was younger than her. After a while, the worker led a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 40s over. This man was only in the 7th layer of element gathering tier, but a faint air of scrolls and books exuded from him, giving a comfortable feeling to others. "This is Ma Tianshang, appraiser Ma," the worker introduced. Ling Han did not mind either way, handed the pill bottle to Ma Tianshang, and said, "Then I'll have to trouble appraiser Ma to take a look for me." "I'll do it." Fan Dongping suddenly stretched out a hand and snatched the pill bottle away. Then, he turned and said to Ma Tianshang with a laugh, "I am a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist, and if we're talking about appraisal of alchemical pill, I should not be beneath Brother Ma, right?" A flicker of displeasure flashed over Ma Tianshang's face, but he did not express this displeasure in view of Fan Dongping's status as an alchemist. Instead, he nodded with a darkened expression and said, "Please." Fan Dongping looked immensely pleased with himself. He naturally was trying to deliberately show off and attract Lu Yutong's attention. Yet he did not consider the fact that he had reached middle age, and was still trying to attract a girl so much younger than himself. He removed the cork of the pill bottle. With a single sniff, his expression changed greatly. He took a look inside, then quickly recorked the bottle and stuffed it inside his pocket directly. He then turned to Ling Han and said, "Brat, this bottle of spirit gathering pills is not worth much. Here, this is a monetary note worth 10,000 silver coins, and I'll buy it from you out of the kindness of my heart." Ling Han was shocked. He knew that Fan Dongping was shameless, but the extent of his shamelessness was something he had never imagined. What was the difference between what he was doing and robbing? Ma Tianshang did not know what alchemical pills were contained inside the pill bottle, but looking at the anxious actions of Fan Dongping, he could guess that they were not ordinary pills. Instantly, an angered expression appeared on his face, and he said, "This is something that the customer has passed to our Spirit Treasures Pavilion to auction, so I should be the one doing the appraisal." "AI, it's difficult to be kind. Take it then. Fan Dongping drew out a pill bottle from his pocket and tossed it over to Ma Tianxiang. Ling Han swept an eye over it, and a cold smile appeared on his face, because the pill bottle had been swapped. How outrageously bold! Chapter 160. Swapped. Ma Tianxiang took the pill bottle from Fan Dongping. He had not observed closely the original pill bottle that Ling Han had brought, so he naturally had no idea that Fan Dongping had done a swap. He uncorked the bottle, took a look inside and could not hold back on expressing his displeasure. These were indeed spirit-gathering pills, and the quality was nothing too impressive either. They looked to be only about 5 to 6 stars and completely not valuable enough to be auctioned by the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Young man, these are just ordinary spirit-gathering pills, and they are not valuable enough to be auctioned. Ma Tianxiang threw the pill bottle back to Fan Dongping, anger flickering across his face. He actually lost his composure because of a bottle of spirit-gathering pills. This was extremely displeasing to him. Lu Yutong already understood what was going on, and the gaze she directed at Fan Dongping had a sliver of killing intent. Meanwhile, Fan Dongping was extremely pleased with himself. He did not know that the pill bottle he had swapped contained foundation-building pills, but was able to ascertain that they were at least black-grade alchemical pills. To be able to obtain such a valuable item for merely 10,000 silver coins was indeed an extremely, overwhelmingly profitable business venture. If he had known that they were foundation-building pills, he most likely would not have dared to try such a scheme, because it would involve a lot of trouble that he would not be able to cope with. Moreover, the person he had cheated was just a young man that was about 16 to 17 years old. So what if he found out that the pill bottle was swapped? What could he do against a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist like him? "Let's go," he said to the gaudy woman next to him. After all, he had something on his conscience, so the best option for him now was naturally to leave this place as soon as possible. Ling Han could not help but smile and said, "You are indeed quite bold to actually dare to scam me." "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm leaving." Fan Dongping's heart beat wildly in his chest. It was an absolute windfall for him to have managed to get a bottle of black-grade alchemical pills out of a scam. "You can't leave anymore," Ling Han said calmly. "Hung, I am a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist. Do you intend to stop me from leaving?" Fan Dongping asked coldly, preparing to walk forwards. "Pa!" Ling Han stretched out a hand and grabbed onto Fan Dongping's wrist. He said with a smile, "I'm not just going to stop you from leaving, I'm also going to thrash you." "You dare!" Fan Dongping shouted loudly. "Let go! Let go your sister!" Ling Han's fist flashed out and with a paw, hit Fan Dongping's left eye, instantly causing the guy to cry out in pain and use a hand to cover his eye. When he lowered his hand, his eye had become black and blue. "Bah bastard!" Fan Dongping roared fiercely. "The people of Spirit Treasures Pavilion, are you not going to interfere and allow someone to commit crime in your territory? Are you still planning to continue your business?" A troubled expression appeared on Ma Tianxiang's face at his words. Indeed, it was forbidden to make trouble at Spirit Treasures Pavilion, but he was not happy with Fan Dongping's character. That was why he had not stepped out to stop Ling Han at the first moment. But as Fan Dongping had pointed out the inaction of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion so directly, it was not proper for him to pretend that he had not heard Fan Dongping either. "Young man, stop immediately," he shouted at Ling Han. Pang 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 pang. Ling Han looked like he had not heard anything at all. He simply concentrated on giving Fan Dongping a harsh beating. Actually daring to try to cheat him. How outrageously brave of him. Fury appeared on Ma Tianxiang's face. This young man actually ignored his words, and even dared to use violence in Spirit Treasures Pavilion. He was really too brave. He snorted and called out, "Guards, apprehend this brat!" Lu Yutong immediately took a step forward. Hu Nyo's ferocious nature also surfaced as she bared her teeth at Ma Tianxiang. Ling Han retrieved a jade bottle from Fan Dongping's clothes. He was of course very familiar with his own possession. He did not even take another look, and simply threw it over to Ma Tianxiang as he said, "This is what I wanted to auction." Ma Tianxiang smiled coldly, and said, "You actually dared to make a move at Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and still want to pretend nothing had happened." "You're wrong. I only caught a thief myself, retrieved my stolen possession, and gave the thief a well-deserved thrashing, Ling Han said calmly and directed a dignified stare at Ma Tianshang. Ma Tianshang's heart trembled. The eyes of this young man seemed to be able to see into the inner depths of his soul, causing his whole body to tremble. Involuntarily, he uncorked the jade bottle. It was only a single instant, and an expression of utter shock appeared on his face. As an appraiser, he was naturally not familiar with the ways of alchemy. However, he was very familiar with the various types of alchemical pills, because this was part of his job. Foundation building pill. Ma Tiansheng immediately gasped out in shock, indescribable astonishment on his face. In that one moment, he had already believed that Ling Han was telling the truth and that Fan Dongping had definitely played a trick on them both and swapped the pill bottles. Otherwise, how could a mere yellow-grade middle-level alchemist like Fan Dongping be able to possess foundation-building pills? So you do have good judgment. Ling Han nodded. Foundation-building pills definitely had never appeared in Rain Country, but this man could recognize that they were foundation-building pills with a single look, so it seemed like he did have some knowledge and experience. Ma Tianshang could not bother with Ling Han at that moment. He drew out a foundation-building pill and scrutinized it to ascertain the quality of it. Ling Han smiled calmly. Since that was the case, then he'd deal with his own issue as well. His foot pressed down on Fan Dongping's face and he smiled as he said, "You are very brave to actually dare to scam even my things." "Brat, you're dead," Fan Dongping said grimly. "I am an alchemist, and you actually dare to injure me. That is a crime punished by death. Moreover, you even stole my alchemical pills. This will only make your crime worse. You still dare not to repent for your crimes." Ling Han shook his head and asked Lu Yutong, according to the laws of Rain Country, how much money should a person like him steal to be able to be sentenced to death? A crime of theft could either be heavy or light. It depended on the amount stolen, as well as the identity of the victim. If 10 silver coins was stolen from a poor commoner, that would be considered a heavy crime. But for a rich man, a theft of 10 silver coins would only cause him to be looked down by others for a while. If a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist like Fan Dongping were to be sentenced to death for theft, the amount stolen would have to be exorbitantly colossal. Lu Yutong thought for a moment, then said, "At least 10 million. Ling Han turned and asked Ma Tianshang, "Are these foundation-building pills worth 10 million? Ma Tiansheng immediately glared at Ling Han furiously. What kind of joke was he talking about? These were foundation-building pills they were talking about, and the lowest price for one was 10 million and above. Do you have any common sense at all? But when he recalled that these foundation-building pills were Ling Han's own, he instantly softened, and said, "There are in total 9 foundation-building pills here, and if they were to be auctioned off, the lowest price they could be sold at would be 100 million silver coins." 100 million! Fan Dongping instantly felt like he was going to pass out as an incomparably cold shiver traveled all over his body. How could Ling Han be any ordinary person if he were able to take out an auction item that was worth 100 million? But, when he thought about the reality that he would really be arrested for theft, it was not only something shameful for him, the colossal amount of 100 million was more than enough to sentence him to death. Beside him, the gaudily dressed woman had already begun to shiver and silently moved away from him, obviously trying to draw a clear dividing line between herself and Fan Dongping. "No, these alchemical pills are mine. Mine." The only thing Fan Dongping could do now was to insist stubbornly that he was telling the truth. If not, he would really be finished. "Are you an idiot?" Ling Han gave him a kick. "How could a stupid pig like you be able to concoct alchemical pills that are close to Earth grade? You yourself are an idiot, so you think others are idiots too?" Fan Dongping's face became ashen. He knew that he had poked a hornet's nest now. Alchemical pills close to Earth grade. Perhaps not even the 2 big bosses of alchemy of Rain Country would be able to concoct such high-grade pills. This young man must definitely have a terrifying background. "Master Ma." 3 gods approached quickly and looked at Ma Tianshang in question. They had come because they saw that there was a big commotion going on here. "Apprehend this man," Ma Tianshang commanded coldly. "Then make a report to the Imperial Guards. Tell them we have encountered a crime of theft here." "Yes, Master Ma." Fan Dongping, who was currently looking like a dead dog, was immediately dragged out by the 3 guards. Chapter 161. An Evil Soul. How may I address you, mister? Ma Tianshang was currently all smiles. The previous horrible impression that Ling Han had given him was completely swept aside, of course. This was a grand customer that was able to produce alchemical pills close to Earth grade. What other person could do such a thing in the whole of Rain Country? Absolutely none. Ling Han. You may address me as young Master Han, Ling Han replied. Ma Tianshang involuntarily wiped off sweat from his forehead. He did not want to address a young man as young master even one bit. But Ling Han was indeed a very important customer. If he offended Ling Han and Ling Han decided not to commission the Spirit Treasures Pavilion to auction off the alchemical pills on his behalf, then he'd really be in deep, deep trouble. Young Master Han. He could only do as Ling Han had said and address him as young master. Then he said, "Please follow me. I shall help young Master Han take care of the procedures for registration." All right, Ling Han agreed with a nod. The news that 9 alchemical pills close to Earth grade had appeared at Spirit Treasures Pavilion very quickly reached the ears of the higher-ups. Very soon, an old man dressed in embroidered robes appeared and received Ling Han respectfully. Then he introduced himself. "I am the 3rd elder of this pavilion. My surname is Jia, and my name is Jia Ba Yun." "Senior Jia," Ling Han greeted him, raising his clasped hands in respect. This old man was a spiritual pedestal tier elite, and more than deserved his respectful greeting. "Young friend, are you intending to auction these foundation building pills here, or directly sell them off to our pavilion?" Jia Ba Yun asked. Ling Han smiled faintly and answered, "Auction." Such alchemical pills were used to assist one to break through to the next level, so it was of course best to auction them off in order to maximize their price. Jia Ba Yun looked a little disappointed at this. If the foundation building pills were directly sold to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, they'd be able to auction a single pill every few years. Firstly, this would help to increase the reputation of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and secondly, rare items were always the most expensive. This would allow the Spirit Treasures Pavilion to obtain the highest amount of profit from these foundation building pill. Unfortunately, this brat was not that foolish. However, 9 foundation pills would definitely be auctioned off for an astronomical figure. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion would be earning more than enough from the commission alone. "Young friend, if a customer commissions the Spirit Treasures Pavilion to auction items, we usually charge a commission fee of 15%. However, because the foundation building pills are much too valuable, I can make the decision to lower the commission fee to 14%. How does that sound?" Jia Ba Yun asked, smiling. How ruthless, they actually had such a high commission rate. Lu Yutong was pouting at one side. The value of 9 foundation building pills was definitely above 100 million. And this commission fee of 14% would be over 1 million silver coins, far above the monthly net profit of the Lu clan. However, Jia Ba Yun was already generous enough to actually cut 100,000 out of the commission of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Of course, this was also because the value of the foundation building pill was really too high. All right, Ling Han nodded. Money was not something that he attached a lot of importance to, anyways. Jia Ba Yun smiled, and continued, "If you want these foundation building pills to be sold for a good price, the best option would be to auction them over a few auctions. If young friend is not in a hurry to use money, why not use this small scheme?" The more the foundation building pills could be sold for, the higher the earnings of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion would be. Thus, Jia Ba Yun would naturally want to use a scheme that could earn the most profit for the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Ling Han shook his head and replied, "I want them all to be auctioned off in a single auction." Jia Ba Yun was stunned for a moment, then sighed. The pills belonged to Ling Han after all, so even if he was a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier, he could only make suggestions and offer advice. To Ling Han, the foundation building pill was something that he could easily concoct, so he would naturally not care if it would be auctioned off for a good price or a better price. In the end, it would definitely be an astronomical price anyways. Worst case scenario, he'd concoct a few other alchemical pills close to Earth grade a few days later, and would still be able to earn a lot of money anyways. All right. This is your letter of proof. When the pills are sold, young friend can bring this along with you to withdraw your funds. You may also endorse someone else to do it for you. However, please take note if the letter of proof is lost. Please make sure to immediately report the loss here. Otherwise, if someone else withdrew the money earned without your approval, there is nothing even I can do, Jia Bayun warned. This token was split into half, and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and Ling Han each held one half. The two halves could be joined together seamlessly. Both Jia Bayun and Ling Han left a handprint on their own half. This would help prevent any possibility of anyone using false identities. Young friend, if you have other such pills in the future, why not come auction them off at our Spirit Treasures Pavilion again? As for the commission fee, it can still be discussed further, Jia Bayun said. All right. Ling Han agreed decisively. Ling Han and his companions left the Spirit Treasures Pavilion right after. As for Fan Dongping, he naturally would not get a good end. Ling Han did not need to worry himself over it. Even if Fan Dongping was a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist, his crime involved an exorbitantly high sum of over 100 million. It would be very difficult for him to escape the death sentence. Who asked him to be so greedy? It was already quite late, so Ling Han headed to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, bringing Lu Yutong and Hunyo with him. The three of them slowly strolled through the streets. Hunyo ran all over the place. Whether it was lollipops or cotton candy or anything else, as long as it was something new, she wanted to give it a try. Thus, by the time they arrived at the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, the sky was already completely dark. Mr. Ling, this way please. Yun Shuang had already been waiting inside, and when she saw Ling Han's figure, she immediately stepped out to receive him. They arrived at a side courtyard. When Yun Shuang pushed open the door and entered, they saw Lady Yan helping out a youth and coming out to receive them. Lady Yan said, "We are honored by your presence, Mr. Ling. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you." Ling Han looked at the two and said, "That's all right. It is not convenient for Lady Yan as well, so I understand your difficulty. This should be your son, am I right? He has been sleeping for quite a number of years, so his body should still be very weak." "Thank you for your understanding, Mr. Ling," Lady Yan said with a smile. She turned and said to the youth by her side, "Tianer, this is your life-saving benefactor. Aren't you going to greet your big brother Ling?" "Big brother Ling," the youth immediately called. His face was extremely pale, and he spoke in a weak voice. "Mr. Ling, this is my son. His name is Yen Tianzhao," Lady Yan introduced to Ling Han. Then she took a look at Lu Yutong, and could not help but smile. Mr. Ling is indeed very fortunate to actually be able to obtain the favor of the princess of the Lu clan. Instantly, Lu Yutong's face reddened, yet her positive impression of Lady Yan improved even further. She liked listening to such words. Come and sit down first." Lady Yan guided the others into the side courtyard. There was already a delicious feast laid out, and around them, there were 8 very beautiful female attendants holding onto lanterns. As the light from these lanterns flickered gently, it was a very uniquely enchanting scene. They all sat down in their respective seats, according to their status as host and guests. Lady Yan naturally took the main seat, and on her left sat her son. Yun Shuang was seated next to him. Meanwhile, Ling Han was seated on Lady Yan's right, with Hunyo beside him, and lastly, Lu Yutong. "Big sister Lu, you are really pretty," Yen Tianzhao praised. A faint blush rose up on his pale face, as if he was being shy. If it had been a young man saying such words, Lu Yutong would not be very happy. However, firstly, Yen Tianzhao was only a teen around 15 to 16 years old, and secondly, she was elated to be praised like this in front of Ling Han. Thus, her good impression of this youth also improved greatly. Of course, that was the affection that an elder sister had for a younger brother. Ling Han only smiled at this. His eyes swept over Yen Tianzhao, and a cold feeling rose up in his heart. This was not fear, but loathing, an extreme kind of loathing. It was as if there was an incomparably evil soul hiding within the body of this youth, causing a deep loathing to inexplicably rise up in his heart. He turned to look at Hunyo and saw that when the little girl's eyes swept over Yen Tianzhao, her little face involuntarily stiffened, and she bared her teeth. Obviously, Hunyo had also sensed the evil nature in him. Ling Han could not help but be immersed in deep thought. The permanent pill would be able to awaken a person who had been trapped in deep slumber. The important thing now was, why had Yen Tianzhao fallen asleep in the first place? From the clues that Lady Yan and Yun Shuang had revealed, Yan Tianzhao should have been sleeping for about 10 years. At that time, had he started sleeping because of some kind of illness? Or had he committed some great crime, which caused an unknown elite martial artist to entrap his spirit and force him to sleep for such a very long time? That was the question. Chapter 162. Yan Tianzhao. Yan Tianzhao kept up a display of bashfulness and would frequently blush throughout their meal. When Lady Yan saw this, she felt both heartache and fondness. This also increased the positive feelings that Lu Yutong and Yun Shuang felt for him, who both doted on him like he was their little brother. But precisely because of his display, the coldness in Ling Han's heart grew even further. But with the indulgent love that Lady Yan was showing for him, if Ling Han actually declared something like eliminating him at this moment, then she would definitely become hostile on the spot and suppress him like some kind of terrible monster. Ling Han would never underestimate the insane and extreme lengths that a mother would go to for her child. Moreover, this was only an intuitive feeling of his. Unless he had reached a point where he was invincible, then, as long as he thought so, he would be able to do as he wished, with no need to care for what others would think of his actions. The unfortunate thing was, he was only in the 7th layer of element gathering tier now. Big brother Ling, why do you look a bit moody? Yan Tianzhao suddenly asked Ling Han, a hint of a smile flickering at the corners of his lips, his gaze deep. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face as he asked, "What do I have to be moody about?" Mr. Ling has Miss Lu to accompany him by his side. How could he possibly be unhappy? Lady Yan pursed her lips in a tender laugh. She was the lady boss of an entertainment business, so she was naturally rather outspoken in her speech. Lu Yutong immediately reddened at her words, but a hint of delight flickered in her eyes. She turned to glance at Ling Han, but when she saw that he looked extremely composed, she could not help but feel a little disappointed. I have not yet congratulated Big Brother Ling. When will you be getting married with Big Sister Yutong? Yan Tianzhao asked in a very innocent-looking manner. This brat was indeed strange. Or so Ling Han thought secretly. When Yan Tianzhao fell asleep, he should have only been about 5 to 6 years old. Then, now that he was awake, he should only have the limited intelligence of a young child of 5 to 6 years old, and would need to recover for some time before his intelligence would catch up with others within the same age range as he. But, just looking at the way he was speaking now, who would believe that this youth had been asleep for over 10 years? However, Lady Yan, Lu Yutong, and Yun Shuang all did not notice this discrepancy. Even if they had noticed, they'd most likely think that this brat was a genius who could immediately adapt and get used to having a normal life. Then he'd just have to see exactly how strange this brat was. Ling Han smiled. This youth did not even have a sliver of cultivation on him, so why was there need for him to be afraid? He had already mentioned it before. He only sensed a very discomforting feeling from this Yan Tianzhao, as if there was an incomparably evil soul hidden within the youth's body that incited disgust from him. Lady Yan, it's best to serve more food. This little girl is a true glutton, Ling Han said with a laugh, pointing at Hunyou who had already begun scarfing down the food. Lady Yan and Yun Shuang were both astonished. How could such a tiny little child have such a terrifyingly huge appetite? It's a good thing to be able to eat, Lady Yan said with a smile. But, she can eat too well. I'm about to be driven into poverty by her humongous appetite, Ling Han sighed. Meanwhile, Lu Yutong rolled her eyes at his words. This guy earned over 100 million in a few moments. No matter how big a glutton Hunyou was, she would not be able to catch up to the rate he was earning money at. And he still dared to moan about being poor. What an actor! With Lady Yan's command, a large amount of food was served one after another. Hunyou did not refuse any dish, and eventually decided not to use chopsticks anymore but rather her bare hands to grab the food. She moved at such a quick speed that Lady Yan and the others all looked shocked at the speed at which she could eat. They had seen people who could eat a lot, but those who could eat so much, they had definitely never seen before. Yan Tianzhao stared at Hunyou for a moment longer, and a smile involuntarily appeared on his lips. She was obviously very intrigued by her. However, Hunyou was a very sensitive little girl, and she immediately raised her head to glare at him. Her gaze was filled with ferocity and killing intent, causing his already pale face to pale a few shades further. Aside from Ling Han, no one else noticed this little episode. Because, just like no one would think that Yan Tianzhao possessed an evil soul, naturally no one would think that such a tiny little girl like Hu Niu would have any ability to harm others. They would only think that she was a big eater. Yan Tianzhao very quickly discovered Ling Han's gaze on him, and offered up a friendly smile. Meanwhile, Ling Han gave him a very meaningful look, causing the smile on Yan Tianzhao's face to slowly fade and hidden depths to appear in his eyes. This did not look anything like a youth of merely 15 to 16 years old. What more, one that had been in a coma for over 10 years and had just been awake for a few days. Please accept this cherishing flower command, Mr. Ling. Lady Yan gifted him with an intricately carved jade plaque that was carved into the shape of a flower. The holder of this plaque would not only be able to enjoy a 20% discount in Cherishing Flower Pavilion, but can also come without any kind of reservations. There are a few side courtyards that have been set aside specifically for extremely honored customers like Mr. Ling. Ling Han received the plaque, smiled and said, "Thank you, Lady Yan." Overall, both hosts and guests quite enjoyed this feast. Of course, the happiest person was definitely Hu Niu. She had eaten so much that her little tummy was slightly rounded. But when one considered the fact that she had eaten so much food, and yet her tummy was only slightly rounded from the colossal amount she had consumed, it was a practically inconceivable concept. Ling Han now was not so curious about where the food she had consumed had gone. In comparison, the spirit base in the little girl's body was something even more shocking. Lady Yan sent out a carriage to deliver the three of them back to the academy. Yun Shuang did not accompany them this time. Only Lady Yan and Yan Tianzhao escorted them to the door and saw them off. On the carriage, Hu Niu, being a very good eater and a very good sleeper, had already found a comfortable spot in Ling Han's arms and gone to sleep peacefully. In a few moments, a long snoring sound could be heard from her. Lady Yan is really too pitiful. She had to support the business of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion all by herself and still take care of her comatose child. If I were her, I would most probably have broken down long ago, Lu Yutong said ruefully. Ling Han thought for a moment, then asked, "Have you ever thought about why Yan Tianzhao had fallen into a coma in the first place?" "It should have been some kind of inborn illness, right? Something like my 3 vanishing veins," Lu Yutong said. And it was exactly this fact that caused her to empathize with Yan Tianzhao and dote on him like a little brother. Then, when he fell into a coma, he should have only been about 5 to 6 years old. He has just barely woken up and yet can completely behave like a normal person. Isn't that strange? Ling Han asked. Maybe he's a natural-born genius? Lu Yutong paused, then said, You seem to be a bit unfond of Tianzhao? I don't like this person. Ling Han did not hide anything. Niu doesn't like too. Hu Niu suddenly awoke and sat upright on Ling Han's lap, looking extremely serious. Why? Lu Yutong felt a bit curious. Ling Han shook his head and said, I can't describe why. I keep feeling that this brat is extremely evil, making me have the urge to thrash him. Therefore, it's best if this brat does not appear before me again, or I will definitely have fun thrashing him. How willful. Thrash him. Hit him. Hu Niu waved her little hands too. You guys. Lu Yutong was completely speechless. Why would Ling Han dislike Yan Tianzhao? Could it be because I doted on him too much, so this guy is jealous? When she thought of this, Lu Yutong's heart could not help beating wildly. Since you don't like it, then I won't see him again, she said, tugging at her sleeve. A beautiful blush rose up on her face, giving her a very tempting look. Was this girl misunderstanding something? But never mind. As long as she did not come into contact with Yan Tianzhao again, that would be fine. Though this brat did not have a single bit of power in him, Ling Han still felt he was really too strange. And if his deductions were not wrong and Yan Tianzhao had fallen into a coma because of something someone else did, then perhaps it was because someone had discovered his evil nature, yet could not bear to kill a young child of 5 to 6 years old, and so merely caused him to fall into a coma. Chapter 163. Jin Wuji's Request. After returning to the Huyang Academy, Ling Han and Lu Yutong both went their own way. He had just stepped into his own courtyard when he immediately heard Lu Ru'er's nagging voice. As a landlord, you are really a failure. You did not even prepare food for us. She seethed. Ling Han could not help a strange expression appearing on his face as he asked, "Don't tell me you two don't know how to cook." Instantly, Lu Ru'er's almond-shaped eyes widened, and she blurted out, "How did you know?" "I can easily tell from looks of your incompetence," Ling Han sighed. This pair of assassin sisters were really failures. They failed at assassination and did not even know how to cook. They really were the rookies of all rookies. "Hang! Who are you calling incompetent?" Lu Ru'er asked with a defiant expression. "When I have recovered all my abilities, I will definitely give you a good thrashing." Ling Han could not help but laugh and said, "Then why should I still continue to care for two enemies like you two? I've been short of money recently, and if I take advantage of the chance to provide information on two criminals, I should be able to get quite a considerable sum of money." Lu Ru'er instantly paled and gasped in fear. "You're just scaring me." "Am I?" Ling Han crossed one leg over the other, an unfathomable expression on his face. Lu Ru'er wavered. She had always been living under the protection of her elder sister, and never needed to worry about the bad intentions of others. Now that she was facing Ling Han, who was in his second lifetime on her own, she was naturally easily played by him. "Come, sing a little song for me. If you sing well enough, then I'll let you off," Ling Han said, smiling. Lu Ru'er finally understood that Ling Han was just trying to scare her and could not help patting her breasts as she said, "You're so mean." But she immediately raised her head and added, "All right, then I'll sing a song. But, don't think that I'm afraid of you. It's just been too long since I last sang, and I feel an itch in my throat." She opened her mouth and began singing. The song she sang was mellow, and would easily touch the hearts of listeners. Ling Han nodded internally. This little girl was a bit of a ditz, but she was indeed quite a talented singer. Looks like she went into the wrong business. "Noisy! Noisy!" Hunyo was awakened by the song and glared in displeasure at Lu Ru'er, her ferocious nature fully out in the open. Lu Ru'er was not very happy with her critique and said, "I have such a beautiful voice, and you actually say it's noisy. There is indeed no hint of elegance in you." "Hang!" Hunyo glared at her in defiance. The two girls glared furiously at one another, neither willing to back down. From the looks of it, they were prepared to glare at each other until the end of time. Ling Han yawned, stood up and walked to his bedroom, intending to go to bed. Hunyo immediately took a great leap and clung onto Ling Han. Then she turned and made a silly face at Lu Ru'er. Such a failure. She couldn't even handle a little kid. Lu Ru'er clutched her hair in frustration. As an assassin, she couldn't even win in a staring competition with a little girl. Was she really suited to become an assassin? When he awoke, there was a shade of pale white in the eastern sky. Ling Han sat up in a cross-legged position and began to cultivate. He was deliberately waking up earlier now to cultivate at a different time from Hunyo. This way, he would not need to run all over the place to cultivate elsewhere. Not bad. I'll be able to break through to the 8th layer of Element Gathering Tier in 3 days. Ling Han smiled. What he wanted the most now was to break through to Gushing Spring Tier and peer into the secrets of the Black Tower. By now, the sun had already risen and Ling Han woke Hunyo up. Though the little girl looked very reluctant, she still adhered to Ling Han's request and began to cultivate. Hunyo had such a terrifying potential, who knows? Her future achievements may not be one bit beneath his. Ling Han prepared breakfast. He was extremely depressed at this. It was fine when he had Hunyo staying with him, but now that there were 2 bigger girls living with him, it was still up to him to cook. This was really unfair. Tong tong tong. A knock sounded on the main door. Who could it be? Ling Han walked over, opened the door and discovered that his visitor was Jin Wuji. Why did this guy come over? Brother Jin, why are you here so early? Ling Han asked, smiling. Jin Wuji smiled bitterly and said, Brother Ling, I would like to ask for your help. With what? Ling Han asked, in no rush to agree to anything yet. Jin Wuji hesitated for a moment, then asked, Is Brother Ling able to make a reservation at the Cherishing Flower Pavilion? Ling Han could not help but look at Jin Wuji strangely. Had this guy struck some deal with Lady Yan? Ling Han had just received the Cherishing Flower command yesterday, and there was already someone here today to ask for his help to make a reservation at the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Brother Ling, I don't know what else to do. You know a lot of people, and I'm desperate. That's why I am here to shamelessly ask for your help, Jin Wuji sighed. Ling Han smiled and asked, What's going on? Why would you need a table at Cherishing Flower Pavilion? If I tell you, promise me you won't laugh at me. Jin Wuji actually blushed. Ling Han put on a serious face and said, I promise I won't laugh. Jin Wuji gathered his thoughts for a moment, then began to speak. Apparently, he met a daughter of a minor clan from the imperial city a year ago. Her name was Zhang Fei Yan, and the two of them had fallen in love with each other. Their relationship had even reached the point that they were beginning to discuss marriage. However, though the Jin clan was a great clan in Yuan City, it was only considered a minor clan in the imperial city. Moreover, those who were living in an area under the direct jurisdiction of the emperor all had an inborn arrogance and felt a sense of superiority towards others. The Zhang clan was thus not very satisfied with a future son-in-law like Jin Wuji and kept trying to separate the couple. Thus, Jin Wuji kept trying to rack his brains, hoping to find some way to change the opinion the Zhang clan had of him. The requirements to enter the Cherishing Flower Pavilion were very high, and anyone who wanted to reserve a table at the Cherishing Flower Pavilion had to at least be from a middle-class clan. Thus, displaying his ability through treating the important members of the Zhang clan to a meal at the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was undoubtedly a very good idea. But the problem now was that even if he had broken through to Gushing Spring Tier, the Cherishing Flower Pavilion would still ignore his request. What more now that he was still only an element gathering tier. Recently, the Zhang clan appeared to plan on marrying Zhang Fei Yan off to the 7th young master of a middle-class clan. Thus, Jin Wuji really had no idea what else he could do and so came to try his luck with Ling Han. After all, Ling Han had just arrived at the imperial city for a few days and had already gotten to know a disciple of Wu Songling, and could even possibly be an honored guest of Grandmaster Wu. Therefore, even if Ling Han had no way to make a reservation at the Cherishing Flower Pavilion by himself, he could still go through Wu Songlin to make the reservation. When he heard the full story, Ling Han could not help but laugh loudly as he said, I had never imagined that Brother Jin would actually be a romantic. Brother Ling, you promised you wouldn't laugh. Meanwhile, Jin Wuji was continuously sighing, distress all over his face. Ling Han still continued to laugh. He patted Jin Wuji on his shoulder and said, Brother Jin, I am not able to reserve a table at the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, but... When Jin Wuji heard his words, he looked disappointed at first. But then he suddenly heard that meaningful pause, so his heart involuntarily started to beat wildly in excitement. Does Brother Ling have some other way? I can't reserve a regular table, but would a side courtyard be all right? Ling Han asked, smiling. Pooh! Jin Wuji instantly choked. If one wanted to reserve a table at Cherishing Flower Pavilion, then one definitely had to have the cultivation level of Spiritual Ocean Tier and above, or be backed by a Spiritual Ocean Tier elite. For example, the members of the main branch of middle-class clans were able to make a reservation. However, they still needed to make the reservation in advance, because the business of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was really too good. If they did not make the reservation well in advance, they would not be able to get a table. And in the case of side courtyards, one would at least require the cultivation level of Spiritual Pedestal Tier or the backing of a Spiritual Pedestal Tier elite to be able to make a reservation for a side courtyard. Brother Ling, you're not joking with me, are you? This surprise was huge, leaving Jin Wuji stuttering in his words. Chapter 164. Snobbish Relatives. Don't worry. Ling Han laughed and asked, when do you intend to treat Miss Zhang's family members? When is the earliest possible time you can get a reservation, Brother Ling? Jin Wuji asked in return. He naturally wanted it to be done as soon as possible. Ling Han spread his hands and answered, whichever day is fine for me. If you're in a rush, I can get one even tonight. Even tonight. Jin Wuji's heartbeat sped up a bit more. What kind of concept was that? Members of the 8 great clans as well as the imperial family of course had the ability to reserve a side courtyard at the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, but even they would not be able to go there at the drop of a hat. Even these extremely important people had to make reservations well in advance. Only a very rare few had the special privilege to make use of a side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion without making any reservations in advance. The Cherishing Flower Pavilion had the practice of setting apart a few side courtyards that were specifically for such emergencies and could be used without any reservations at all. For example, the third imperial prince was one who had this special privilege. But, who was the third imperial prince? He was a genius of martial arts on his own, with a cultivation level of the 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier, also one of the heirs to the throne. In the future, he would definitely become a very powerful person. But what about Ling Han then? Could it be that he also had this kind of special privilege? Jin Wuji was really astonished. He knew that Ling Han was a monster who had charged out like a dark horse to take the first place in the Dayuan tournament, and had even managed to obtain the full support of 3 black-grade low-level alchemists. But that was only in Dayuan City. This was the Imperial City. Ling Han had just been here for a few days, and he was already so high up on the social ladder. To compare yourself with others would indeed drive one crazy. Jin Wuji could not help but sigh internally. He had been in the Imperial City for more than 3 years, but aside from the significant increase of his cultivation level, there was not even one bit of increase to his personal status. If he compared himself with Ling Han, he would really die of embarrassment. He had no suspicions that Ling Han was just bluffing. Ling Han could be a joker at times, but he would never make unrealistic boasts on matters like this. Tonight then, Jin Wuji said, barely able to hide the excitement on his face. For a minor clan like the Zhang clan, they wouldn't even be able to step through the main doors of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. What more to have a meal at one of the side courtyards within? After this night, what need would there be for him to still fear that the Zhang clan would continue to look down on him and object to his and Zhang Fei Yan's marriage? All right. Ling Han nodded. Thank you, Brother Ling. Thank you, Brother Ling. Jin Wuji bowed repeatedly, obviously very excited. He secretly decided that no matter what favors Ling Han needed from him in the future, he would do everything in his might to help him. He turned and left. It was naturally to inform the Zhang clan about the dinner tonight. This was something he should be very proud of to announce. Meanwhile, Ling Han remained in his courtyard, immersing himself in comprehending the art of the sword. He had reached a bottleneck and had been stuck on mere 6 flashes of sword chi for a very long time. Yet, somehow he had still not managed to break through and form the 7th flash of sword chi. In truth, even if it was an extremely capable swordsman, it was already very impressive to be able to form a single flash of sword chi in 10 years' time. Moreover, the more flashes of sword chi one managed to form, the more they would slow down in their advance. By the time a swordsman got to be about 100 years old, if he had managed to form 10 flashes of sword chi, he would be praised as a genius of martial arts. However, Ling Han was not satisfied. His starting point was well ahead of all others, so naturally he could not compare himself with the normal rate of advance. Previously, he had spent a lot of time on discussions of the art of the sword with Mo Gao. Mo Gao was a mad genius who had actually managed to touch a sliver of the mysteries of sword heart and had given Ling Han a lot of inspiration. On the spot, Ling Han had managed to form his 6th flash of sword chi. However, this had also expended all the accumulated understanding he had built up, so it would be indeed difficult for him to advance another step forward in a short period of time. Ling Han sat in a cross-legged position, holding his right index finger out as if it was a sword he was wielding. He continued to wave his finger around in various sword movements, examining the art of the sword that he had managed to comprehend so far in his mind. Before he knew it, it was already noon. He stopped and got up to prepare food for Hu Nuth food for himself, and the Lu sisters was just cooked in passing. It would be an accomplishment enough if they even managed to finish off 1/100th of the food that he had prepared. He spent the afternoon on his studies of the art of the sword. For Ling Han, there was nothing much that the academy could teach him. Before he came, he had already decided that the primary purpose he was here was just to make Ling Dongxing happy. However, the path he was meant to walk in the future had already been well planned in advance by him. In the evening, he brought Hu Niu along with him to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. He merely flashed the Cherishing Flower command, and automatically, There were female attendants leading him to an elegant side courtyard and inquiring him about the dishes and wines to be served for the dinner tonight. The appetizers were served first. When Hunyeo saw them, she could not help but feel her appetite stirred up and failed to hold back from stealing a few bites, causing the 8 female attendants serving them to cover their mouths as they smiled secretly. Ling Han would naturally not reprimand her either. After all, he was not short of money now. If she finished off a plate, then he'd just have another plate served. After about half an hour, a company of 8 walked in, led by a female attendant. Aside from Jin Wuji, the other 7 people of this party was naturally the members of the Jiang clan. They included Jiang Fei Yan and her parents, as well as her 2 aunts and their 2 sons. So this is a side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. It's really too beautiful. In the past, we only managed to get into the ordinary rooms of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Looks like Fei Yan has really found the right guy this time. He can even manage to make a reservation for a side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Yes. I heard that only members of the 8 great clans and the imperial family have the ability to reserve a side courtyard here. Then wouldn't that mean that we are at the same level as the 8 great clans and the imperial family now? The older members of the Jiang clan were all looking very excited. As a minor clan, they did not have much to worry about. The only thing they lacked was advancement in their social status and recognition of their status. Merely having dinner here tonight would be enough for them to boast for the rest of their lives. Do you have any souvenirs here that I can attach to my clothes? Eldest aunt immediately asked one of the female attendants. If there were, then she would definitely attach it to her clothes every day and would show it to everyone she met. The female attendant stared blankly. Those who were able to come here to spend money were naturally of extremely high status, so she had never been asked such a question by anyone else before. She could not help but be stunned for a moment before replying, "We don't." "How could you not have any?" Youngest aunt also leaned over. "Why not you ask someone to prepare one for us?" That's right. Prepare one," eldest aunt said hurriedly. When they heard the words of these 2 senior relatives, Jin Wuji and Jiang Fei Yan both blushed to the roots of their hair, feeling unbearably ashamed. Meanwhile, those 2 cousins of Jiang Fei Yan kept staring pervertedly at the faces and breasts of the female attendants with deep focus. "Brother Jin." Ling Han stood and waved at Jin Wuji. "Brother Ling." Jin Wuji returned the gesture, filled with gratitude. "Haha, thank you very much, Brother Jin. Thanks to you, I can also enjoy a meal at this Cherishing Flower Pavilion for once," Ling Han said, smiling. Jin Wuji knew that Ling Han was trying to put him in a high position. He could not help feeling very touched by the action, and only nodded repeatedly. Ling Han smiled. Though there had been a little conflict between himself and Jin Wuji and Jin Wuxiang, Jin Wuji had already apologized long ago, so everything was forgotten. And afterwards, Jin Wuji purposely forfeited his match at the Dayuan tournament, and even brought his own people to help rescue Ling Dongxing. Whether or not Ling Han had needed it, all these were debts that Ling Han owed. Debts would naturally have to be repaid, so Ling Han was very willing to act as a minor role to cast a better light on Jin Wuji. "You naturally have to thank our Wuji." Eldest aunt wore a very despising expression, looking very disdainful. "I heard that you are a friend of Wuji's from the Dayuan city. You are indeed a country bumpkin that doesn't know the rules of proper society. It was already nice enough to invite you to dinner, and you actually brought a little girl along with you." Jin Wuji's expression changed immediately, and he was about to speak up. Yet when he saw Ling Han shake his head at him, he could only swallow the urge down. Ling Han did not take the words of eldest aunt to heart at all. They went in one ear and out the other. What need was there for him to take such a vulgar person seriously? After all, they would only be meeting this once. In the future, he would not see these people again. Thankfully, the members of the Jiang clan were all mesmerized by the new sights they saw since it was their first time entering into a side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. When the dishes were served one after another, as smoothly as the flow of water, they could not bother with displaying disdain for Ling Han any longer and began enjoying the food. "Aya!" One of the female attendants suddenly exclaimed in shock, pointed at the Jiang Fei Yan's eldest cousin, and said, He touched my bottom." He knew that the members of the Jiang clan were snobbish and overbearing, yet had never thought that even two juniors would behave so lecherously out in the open. He approached that female attendant, handed her a monetary note and said, "I am really sorry. This is a small token from me. Though it cannot compensate for the wounds to your self-esteem, but please accept it." That female attendant took one look at the monetary note and paled in shock. It was a monetary note worth 10,000 silver coins. Grandmaster Yuan Chu Yuan. Do you all know who Grandmaster Yuan Chu is? A black-grade middle-level alchemist. His status is high enough to scare all of you to death. The members of the Jiang clan did indeed receive a scare. That was a black-grade middle-level alchemist they were talking about. A being like that was like a mountain to them, someone that they could only look up to. Hualien, Yuaner, come with me, quick. Let's go and greet Grandmaster Yuan Chu. Who knows, when Grandmaster Yuan Chu is happy, he'd decide to concoct a few furnaces worth of alchemical pills for us. By that time, it would be very easy for the two of you to break through to element gathering tier, eldest aunt said excitedly. That was why the two of them had returned in such a hurry. That would not be appropriate, would it? Grandmaster Yuan Chu is a very noble status. If we so rashly disturb him, it may possibly anger Grandmaster Yuan Chu, Jin Wuji said immediately. Ling Han did not get angry for his sake, but who was Grandmaster Yuan Chu? There was no way that he would give face to Jin Wuji, and definitely not to the Jiang clan. Che, we are now high up on the social ladder as well. We're just asking for a few furnaces worth of pills. Youngest aunt said calmly. You two are idiots. Jin Wuji cursed internally. He suddenly felt an uncontrollable urge to rush forward and slap these two silly. Chapter 166. Getting into trouble. Anyone who could manage to sit and dine in a side courtyard of Cherishing Flower Pavilion was considered of extremely noble status. What kind of bizarre theory was that? These two idiots. Who was Grandmaster Yuan Chu? If they dared to so rashly barge in, who knows if he would be angered by their lack of manners. Even if they were killed right on the spot, they would have died for nothing. Unfortunately, this pair of sisters had already lost their wits. Mother, can we really break through to element gathering tier? Zhang Hualien asked very excitedly. Of course. He is an authentic black-grade middle-level alchemist. Breaking through to gushing spring tier would be a piece of cake with his help. What more element gathering tier? Eldest aunt waved her hand, acting as if Yuan Chu was her servant that she could command to concoct alchemical pills as she liked. Good, good, good. Quickly, let's go. Zhang Hualien and Tong Yuan both stood up hurriedly. Neither of them were very talented in martial arts and had been stuck in the 9th layer of body refining tier for quite some time without any hint of breaking through anytime soon. In the Imperial City, this kind of cultivation level was really considered trash. The two mother and son pairs impatiently rushed out. Jiang Fei Yan's parents were about to stop them from leaving, when Ling Han signaled at Jin Wuji with his eyes, indicating him to stop the Jiang parents from doing anything. Just let them experience a little hardship. Ling Han said calmly. Brother Ling, that's Grandmaster Yuan Chu we're talking about here. If he were to get angry. Jin Wuji was no idiot. If a black-grade middle-level alchemist wanted to oppose a minor clan who only had a background of gushing spring tier, that would only require a mere thought from the former. He would not care if those two unreasonable snobbish mother and son pairs died as a result of their idiocy, but worried that they would also drag the Jiang clan down with them. No matter, Ling Han smiled faintly. If it was anyone else, he would still have to do something to settle the issue. However, it was Yuan Chu. He was practically Ling Han's lackey. Jiang Fei Yan's parents were not fools. When they heard the conversation between the two young men, how could they not understand? They finally knew that Ling Han was the real reason why they were able to enter into Cherishing Flower Pavilion. How foolish and funny of them to have thought that Ling Han had come over to join in the dinner on Jin Wuji's invitation. Since Brother Ling says so, then I am relieved. When Jin Wuji saw that Jiang Fei Yan and her parents had understood the ins and outs of the situation, he naturally would not continue to hide the truth, and said, It is all thanks to Brother Ling that I was able to reserve a side courtyard of Cherishing Flower Pavilion this time. I am only benefiting from my association with you. The Jiang parents both smiled. Firstly, they were not as snobbish as those two aunts, and secondly, they were smarter than them. It was all right that it was not Jin Wuji's credit that they were able to come here. The important thing was that Jin Wuji had this kind of relationship, friend and background. In the future, as long as Jin Wuji was able to marry Jiang Fei Yan, then others would still give a bit of face to the Jiang clan, even if only for Ling Han's sake. It was an extremely pleasurable thing to interact with smart people, and the air around the banquet table became livelier. Even Hu Niu was clapping her hands on the table, demanding to drink wine, which caused all the others to laugh at her antics. On the surface, the little girl was still very adorable and cute, so much that Jiang Fei Yan continuously stared at her. Since Miss Jiang likes children so much, why not quickly marry Brother Jin and have a cute son of your own? I will definitely prepare a very, very big red packet as a gift at that time. Ling Han teased. Jiang Fei Yan instantly blushed red and lowered her head shyly. Meanwhile, Jin Wuji was much bolder than her, and said with a loud laugh, "Brother Ling, that's what you said. A very, very big red packet, right? I will remember your words, and you definitely can't break your word." "Niu wants red packet too," Hu Niu proclaimed, raising her hand. "Just eat you." Ling Han shoved a chicken thigh into her hands, and the little girl immediately began chewing on it happily. Woo woo woo. It was at this moment that the door to the side courtyard was pushed open. Zhang Hualien and Tong Yuan were both supporting their respective mothers as they entered. All four of them were scowling miserably, and looked as if they had just received a terrible thrashing. They were all black and blue, making for a very sorry display. With all said and done, Jiang Fei Yan's father was still the younger brother of these two women. He hurriedly stood up and asked, "What has happened?" "Uncle." Zhang Hualien and Tong Yuan were both shivering in fear as they said, "We went over to request Grandmaster Yuan Chu to help us concoct some alchemical pills, but he did not agree to our request. Mother and youngest aunt said some rash things, which angered Grandmaster Yuan Chu. He had us beaten up, and said that he would be coming over later to see what clan would dare to act so arrogant." "Uncle, I'm still young. I don't want to die. You have to save me." "Wuji, I am your eldest cousin. You can't simply stand by and watch as I die, right? You must have some way to save us, right?" One of the cousins begged for Jiang Fei Yan's father to help them, while the other pled with Jin Wuji to save them. Jiang Fei Yan's father immediately frowned, and looked very displeased. These two sisters of his kept trying to make him lose face within the clan, and had even allowed their two sons to interfere in the matters of the Jiang clan. They were obviously intending to make a grab for the family property of the Jiang clan. He could tolerate all this because he was not a person who placed a lot of importance on power and material things in the first place. Moreover, he only had a single daughter, and his one and only wish was for his daughter to marry a good man. Then, he would be able to leave all his worries behind, and travel all over the world with his beloved wife. But these two idiots actually went and angered a black-grade alchemist. Were they trying to drag the Jiang clan down with them? There was too much involved in this issue. There was absolutely no way that he would allow the whole Jiang clan to fall as a result of their stupidity and die with them, so he said, "You were the ones who caused the trouble. You figure out how to get Grandmaster Yuan Chu's forgiveness on your own." "Jiang Boexin, you're really too ruthless." Eldest aunt instantly jumped up, baring her fangs and brandishing her claws. "These are your flesh and blood nephews, and you want to just stand by and watch as they die?" Jiang Fei Yan's father could not help but shake his head. These two sisters of his had not even realized the errors of their ways. They were really unreasonable. Then he asked furiously, "What did you actually say to Grandmaster Yuan Chu that he would be making his way here personally?" Eldest aunt and the other three all exchanged hesitant looks, but did not say anything. According to what Jiang Fei Yan's father knew of their characters, how could he not guess? The four of them must have dragged everyone here into the issue in order to escape. They must have bluffed and said some grand names to be able to escape out of that situation. After all, those who were able to reserve a side courtyard of Cherishing Flower Pavilion were all of extremely noble status. Grandmaster Yuan Chu would definitely not drop to the level of the four idiots, but would still make his way to personally see the host here. He would be calling the main host to account for the offense that these four had committed. They were really going to suffer, and everything was because of these four idiots. Jiang Fei Yan's father suddenly felt an urge to spit out blood in his extreme fury. It was already enough that these two mother and son pairs were as stupid as pigs, but they actually even implicated others, making him feel an uncontrollable urge to tear all four of them into pieces. From outside, the sound of footsteps was heard coming nearer and nearer. Then a knock was heard on the door and a man's voice said, "We are here on behalf of Grandmaster Yuan Chu to pay our respects to the host of this side courtyard." Shua, Jin Wuji and the others all stood, all of them looking very anxious. Though Ling Han had already assured them just now that everything would be all right, he was really still much too young. Who would put too much confidence in his words? When they thought about it, even if Ling Han was awesome, the source of his awesomeness must be from the party behind him. But what party could actually overcome the fury of a black-grade middle-level alchemist? Within Rain Country, there were only a few individuals who would have such ability, such as the current Rain Emperor and the clan heads of the 8 great clans. Quickly, go and receive Grandmaster Yuan Chu. Jiang Fei Yan's father said hurriedly. He did not believe that Ling Han's backer could be even more powerful than a black-grade middle-level alchemist. It was simple. Ling Han was not a member of the imperial family of Rain Country, nor one of the younger members of the 8 great clans. All of them approached the door. Everyone was shuddering apprehensively. The pressure of an oncoming meeting with a black-grade middle-level alchemist was really much too heavy. Ling Han meanwhile remained seated where he was, and together with Hu Niu, continued to enjoy his food. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.